you guys have a good meeting Sunday?
Yeah, we did. We looked into number 3. Gimel is the letter for the third letter. Huge amount of stuff in there about that. I told him you could take that number 3, you could study for 1,000 hours and never get it all. I mean,
just the number 3.
Just the number 3 and corresponding letter Gimel. I said, I don't know how far we'll get in 20 minutes, but we'll look at a few things. There's just so much in there. And, you know, in our Western culture, the letters and the numbers really don't have much meaning to them. I mean, a number is just how you count stuff, you know. There's 3 guys or 3 dogs or something, and that's about it.
Yeah.
It doesn't say anything else, just how many of something there is. But in Hebrew number, it tells you a lot. And not only does it tell you something, but every number and every letter in the Hebrew list talks about who God is or something about him. So we talked about a lot of things that are brought up with, what was that? Something.
That's my seat readjusting.
Something fell, but anyway, all that you look at anything that, for example, the first time you read the number 3 in the whole book refers to the 3rd day in the creation, and it's the day that trees and herbs of the field were raised up. And of course it mentions seed-bearing trees were growing on the 3rd day. And of course later it talks about the fruit of the seed-bearing trees would be the food for the people, and the animals would eat the herbs of the field. So, but when it was brought out, there was no animals and there was no people. So why do you need fruit trees when there's no one there to eat the fruit? Well, the reason is that before the humans even set on the earth, the Lord had already provided food for them, so that God never owes anybody anything. It's always there before. In other words, before we're even there to need it, he has already set it up, just like our salvation. Before anyone needed salvation, salvation was already made. The lamb slain from before the foundation of the world. So that's important. So anyway, another little thing about the Hebrew numbers. In the Hebrew numbers range from 1 through 10. All of the numbers are a combination of those, 1 through 10. And 1 is a reference to God himself, the one God. God is represented by number 1. And 10 is also a reference to God as the ultimate king. 10 represents God as the king or as the absolute ruler. You have 10 commandments and things like that have to do with his authority. So the first number, 1, and the last one, 10, refer to God. Just like in the letters, the Lord said, I am the aleph and I am the tav, the first and the last. So the Hebrew numbers, even the numbers, correspond to aleph tav. But in the Western culture, we start with 0, which means nothing, has no value, and ends up with 9, just 1 short of the authority of God. So, you know, the book says all have sinned and come short of the glory. So even in our number system, our numbers don't acknowledge that God is the ultimate authority, whereas the Hebrew numbers do. But, and of course in the letters it's all the same, it goes that way too. But Gimel means, among many other things, it also means a burden bearer. So in Isaiah 53, that he has borne our griefs, carried our sorrows, he is the burden bearer. and a lot of other things like that. So I mentioned, and if somebody used the word three about anything, does that make them think about God? Or if they say any number or any letter. I was talking to one guy, happened to be looking at a car. I said, there's a car, C-A-R. What does C mean? It has no meaning. It just represents part of a sound.
Mm-hmm.
A doesn't mean anything. R doesn't mean anything. But you put them together, and we've agreed that those three letters put together, we say car. We know what a car means, but those letters really don't mean anything at all. But in Hebrew, every letter has a definite meaning, and every letter in it tells you something about who God is. In Psalm 119, is 22 paragraphs of 8 verses. Why 8? What is it about 8? 8 means new beginning.
New beginning, right.
So 22 times it reminds us of new beginnings. What's salvation all about?
A new beginning.
Yeah. So the Lord told Nicodemus, without a new beginning, you'll never see the kingdom. So here, every letter, when you put them all together in a row like 119, gives you 22 times it reminds you of the new beginning. But in our language, we have 26 letters in the alphabet. Which one of them tells you anything about God? Not one item. And kids go to school. I don't know what they learn these days. In the old days, we learned to count and we learned to read. We learned the letters and we learned the numbers. Not one time did any of them even slightly lead us to think about God. And it's not that there's something evil about them, but they're just the world's way of doing things. So a friend of mine asked me, he said, why do you always want to study Hebrew? Because it says that. It tells me who God is. I want to know who God is. That's why. Our language, Greek doesn't tell you anything about God. People say, I want to study Greek because that's what the Bible was, or the New Testament was all written in Greek. It wasn't written in Greek. It was translated into Greek from Hebrew, most of it. There might have been a little of it written to Greeks because they were addressed to Greek people, but the majority of it was written in Hebrew by Jews. That was their language. And
could you imagine the book of Hebrews being written in Greek?
Yeah,
that doesn't make any sense.
No, of course not. And it was written to Jews in Jerusalem. Probably primarily, many of them had been thrown out of the synagogues because of their belief, which destined them to a life of poverty, and they needed to be helped and everything, encouraged. So the book was written to encourage them. And Matthew is absolutely a Hebrew lesson. The book of Revelation is right out of the Tanakh, and the entire Tanakh is written in Hebrew. And so why would it be written? Because that's the language of the people that God used them to bring the truth to the world. And why was anything written in Greek? You know why?
Because they were the imperialists.
Yeah, the Greeks had seized power over Israel prior to the Romans taking it, and the Greeks were not nice guys. They were thugs. It was a terrible tyranny, and they oppressed the Jews terribly. In fact, at one point, if you so much as practice keeping a Sabbath day, it could be a death penalty under the Greeks.
And you couldn't say the word of God? I mean, the name of God?
Yeah, I can't remember all the different things, but the Greeks were trying to force them to become under the Greek culture and to observe the Greek. They also introduced Greek gods and Greek philosophy and everything else. And of course, they would say, okay, you're going to learn to speak Greek because this is who you're going to be. And it would be forbidden to speak Hebrew or to be practicing as a Hebrew or Jew. So the Greeks forced the people to absorb Greek things. And of course, then they not only did that, but they even translated the names that are in Tanakh into Greek names.
Yeah.
Jesus is a Greek name. It's not a Hebrew name. The Hebrew name of the Lord is Yeshua.
Which
And
is
yet,
salvation.
Yeshua means salvation. Jesus does not mean salvation. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a Greek translation of the name Yeshua. So, and Christ, it's a Greek translation of the Hebrew Messiah. So it's as though the Greeks said, we're going to change those names, and so you'll be saying them in Greek. And when people, if you want to make the name Jesus into salvation, you have to retranslate it back to Hebrew, because there were lots of guys named Jesus. It was a very common Greek name, and there's nothing wrong with the name, but why call the Lord a name that is given to you by the tyrannical Greeks instead of the name that he is? You know, if you and I took a trip to Mexico and I was going to introduce you to somebody, would I translate your name into a Spanish name this is my friend Brett? Why would I give you a Mexican name just because we're visiting Mexico, you know? And, but for some reason, what does almost 99.9999% of the believers use the Greek names for those? And if you come in here with a Hebrew name, they look at you funny, like, what do you want to call him that for? Well, that's because that's what his name is, you know. That's what the Messiah is called. The Messiah is not called the Christ, not in Hebrew, but they all call him that, you know. And
you know, I've been focusing on that same issue.
Yeah.
That you know, we have this thing called the Restoration and the Reformation.
Yeah.
And you know, that was, it's all in relation. They call it Protestantism.
Yeah.
It's a group of believers who are reacting against the Catholic Church.
Well, yeah, it's a protest. They're
Yeah.
protesting against the Catholic. Exactly.
And I think I mentioned this to you maybe last week, but
Where's the coffee?
yeah, I'll get it. But like in the, well, let me step in the back seat and become a coffee aficionado for a moment.
Okay.
And I will continue.
So you're talking about the Reformation and Protestantism.
Yeah, you want to drink out of this cup you got in here?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. The one with your
Grandkids,
grands on it.
Dale's kids, yeah.
Oh, man, look what I got, Jim. Banana bread.
Oh, wow. You weren't fooling them. You said good bread. That's pretty hard to beat.
All right, so I'm going to give you some creamer.
Yeah, just put it in a cup and then put some coffee with it. You know, that way you don't have to stir it. I'll just put the cream in first.
Here you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This container we got, it'll keep it hot for a long time.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, sure tastes good.
It'll keep it hot at least till the next round. I got some napkins if we need them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got the Restoration, Reformation, and it's all in response to the Catholics, which the reason it's that way is because Catholics had a lot of things wrong. And
They did, and they still do. And they also have a lot of things right.
yeah. And you know, so I wouldn't say to knock them is the right thing to do, because you know, I think everybody's got something wrong, and there you go.
Yeah, is it sliced or?
Yeah, it
oh,
is.
yeah,
It's
good.
sliced.
Thank you.
But one of the points is that there's a few things that went sideways during church history
Let's throw it down there.
that that has messed up everybody, Catholics, Protestants included. For instance, the real Great Schism, the Jews separating from the Greeks, or for the Gentiles, that was a greater tragedy than the Eastern Church and the Western Church making a split in 1053, because
you know what the issue of the splitting of the Catholic Church was? Why do you have Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, English Orthodox, Roman? It's all who's going to be the Pope.
Mm-hmm. Who's going to be the boss?
Yeah, who's going to rule? The general theology is pretty close and pretty similar.
Mm-hmm.
But in the first place, which one of them's right about who should be the Pope?
None of them.
None of them. Who is the Pope anyway?
There is none. The only Papa is Abba.
Well, there is a Pope, and it's the Lord himself.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's definition by, I guess that's what the word means. But why do they want to have a Pope?
Well, that was the second thing I was going to say, is that I think one of the other things that went sideways in the church is authority, because you can look at the imagine looking at the New Testament with the eye that all the positions in the church were not meant to be a hierarchy; they just meant to be roles.
Yeah,
and people position, because we think hierarchical, we automatically say, well, the apostles must have been the big guys.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody else is a little guy. But that's not what Paul taught. It's not really what Peter taught either.
It's not what Yeshua taught.
It's no. That's the most important thing, is that Yeshua actually told them when James and John were arguing about their position. He said, "This is not the way we're going to do this."
Yeah.
And the thing is that it seems like every Christian tradition has forgotten about that.
Yeah.
And went on to be the authority.
Well, the time right before his last Passover meal with him, he washes our feet. What was he doing when he did that? Washing our feet.
Showing his true love.
Well,
full extent of his love is what it said.
Well, why does that show love?
He's saying, I'm here to serve.
Yeah, he has assumed the position of a servant. Ordinarily, if you had anybody with any people that work for him, if you had visitors, the servant's job would be to wash their feet as they come in the door. It would be a slimy job. It's not something that the master would ever do. He'd have a servant do that. And to do that is to take the position of a servant. So the Lord said to his disciples, okay, I washed your feet. Now you need to wash each other's feet. So there's a whole denomination that does that. They play around this washing feet ceremony, which is sort of ridiculous, but they do it. Why do they do it?
Because the Lord did it.
Well, that's not really why they do it. I mean, he did, and they get it from that, but why are they doing it? Are they trying to do exactly what he said to do? What did he tell them to do?
Tell them to serve each other.
He told them to serve. He didn't tell them to wash anybody's feet. But the
it,
washing feet symbolized being a servant. So,
because like what he said to Peter,
yeah,
you don't need a bath. You just need to get your feet clean. And now they're clean, so go out and do something else to serve.
So if you're really serving, I mean, there's 1,000 ways you can serve, but serving literally means to put the needs of the other guy ahead of me. I'd bow down to do something for him. And the foot washing thing was just a picture of that. That's all. But the minute you make that into a ritual, which you have to do, literally wash somebody's feet, you just turn servitude into another religious practice, which is really sadly a form of an idolatry. You made that into something that really, in fact, in the Catholics, they have what they call 7 sacraments.
Mm-hmm.
What's a sacrament?
Well, it's I think the root word means that it's something that makes it sacred.
Yes. What it means is a sacrament is something that contributes to your salvation.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't do a sacrament, you really shortchange your salvation. One way they punish people, they refuse to allow them to take the Eucharist.
Yeah.
Because by denying them the Eucharist, they're really taking away their salvation, in their opinion. Not
Right.
really true, but that's what they're doing. It's a terrible condemnation to have you denied the Eucharist.
Yeah. And, something I've been saying lately to anybody who cares to hear is, to compare the religion in America to a business in America, where you got a product and a service.
Yeah.
The product is salvation, and the service is maintenance of your salvation.
Yeah.
And, that's the nature of religion right there, is maintenance of your salvation. And that's what the sacraments are, aren't they?
And the religious system even gets into competition over it, like a business. This store tries to get you to come to their shop, and the one over there tries to get you to come to that one over there.
Yeah.
So they're in competition with each other. But that's just like what he told his disciples. You guys are in competition with each other. Which one's the greatest? He said, that's forbidden. You don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what is the churches do commonly is each one tries to almost put on a better program than the next one to try to attract as many as they can. And they even gauge their success by how many people come.
Yeah.
When I was in the Free Methodist many years ago, and I'm sure they do this to any place, they always had a little board up on the front with numbers on it. Here's how many people showed up today. Here's how many here was last week.
Yeah.
Here's how much the offering was today, and here's how much it was last week.
Right.
Why would they put those numbers up there?
They're keeping a record.
But, well, why do they want to? Why bother?
To boast
for
and brag.
what?
So they can reach goals and supersede
If you say,
them.
last week we only had 84 people, but this week we had 87, so it kind of makes you want to jump into the game and try to boost those numbers or something,
Yeah.
And again, perhaps whoever's doing it doesn't really mean that. That's not why they're doing it. They don't think they're doing that. But, you look at the apostles and the prophets. Did they ever tell you anything about gauging their success by how many showed up or how much was done?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, they don't keep track of their operation by their accomplishments in any way. In fact, over and over they just say whatever's done is done by the Spirit of God, not by anything that we do. And we don't need to keep record of what we do because, the Lord said, without me, you can do nothing. So, but with Him, you can do major things. But is that because you and Him have joined up in partnership?
No.
Do you make God more successful by your part?
No.
And they, in the letter of the number system, they start with 0. I mean, our language, our culture starts with Hebrew. Don't even have a word for 0. Why not?
Well, they have the language feature of.
They just say the word lo, which means no or
yeah.
nothing, but in their list of numbers there is no 0.
Well, with the idea that all the numbers say something about God, then
Yes, it starts. The first number is 1, and that's God. It's as though our part doesn't even deserve a number, doesn't even deserve being included in the list. However, 0 has some meaning to it. you pick a number like God's number 1, and you put a 0 next to it, what do you got?
10.
You got 10. So when our nothingness is put up with God's everything, it multiplies, it becomes part of a great multiple, but the 0 does not help the 1 become anything greater than it is, because the 1 goes all the way through up to 10, the ultimate authority of God. At which point in any of those numbers does God say, boy, I sure wish you were here, because I'd be even greater. So our 0 doesn't make God greater, but our 0 allows God to make us into something that's worthwhile. And it's maybe a bit tricky to comprehend that, but the Western culture just starts with 0 and ends with 9, and 9 is one short of who God really is. So the Western culture kind of misses the whole point of it all.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been looking at, is that, you know, just because we're the Western culture doesn't mean that that's the one that God is seated in. Not that he doesn't supersede all cultures, but...
Was there any more of that good bread?
Yeah.
Boy, I'd take another slice. That stuff's worth eating.
It is worth eating. Well, we'll give Alicia our appreciation.
You were saying something about wanting to make some questions or something.
Yeah, let's do that.
Go ahead.
Well, all right. So one question is, let's see if I can come up with it. Oh, this one is about judgment. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the questioner poses it like this: if our sins are carried away from the east to the west,
Mm-hmm.
then why is there a judgment?
Okay. What's the meaning of the word judgment anyway?
Put things in its place.
Put everything where it belongs. So judgment works in two ways. Every time you use a judgment on anything, you're putting something where it should go, where it belongs. If it's something worthwhile, something good, something that's acceptable, you put it over here where that stuff goes. If it's no good, it goes over in the junk pile.
Mm-hmm.
And until the Lord can take away, or has taken away, our sin from us and removed it from us as far as the east and the west, but is what we commonly call the judgment day, or the position where it says that the whole creation of everyone who's been into the graves would be resurrected to stand before God for judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So the judgment that he's talking about there is kind of like making it a public declaration, so we put it that way, that here's where the bad stuff goes, here's where the good stuff goes. Now, when he says the whole world, and it really does say that they that are in the graves would be resurrected in order to stand in judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So who's he talking about?
The people from the graves?
Yeah.
Everybody.
Everybody.
You want more?
Yeah.
This is the cream.
In other words, it doesn't... What if you're a bad guy? You've never been redeemed. Then what? You stand there before the judgment.
Going to get judged.
What if you've been made righteous by the grace of God?
Well, you're getting judged too.
Yeah. Why?
Because God's putting everything in its place.
Yeah. And he even describes it, I'm sure, in a rather parable sort of a form. He says it's like a shepherd or a herder separating the sheep from the goats.
Yeah.
And, of course, that's just a figure. There's nothing evil about goats and nothing particularly righteous about sheep.
Right.
But they show a thing that was very commonly done particularly in the old days and still to some degree even now. A lot of times they would raise both sheep and goats even together. Because in some ways they probably handle them the same way. They both eat about the same stuff and whatever. So you got a big flock of sheep and goats, and then somebody comes and wants to buy some sheep from you, maybe. So what do you have to do?
Get the sheep in one place and goats in
You
the
got
other.
to separate them because he only wants sheep. If you just herded the whole bunch into his wagon or something, you wouldn't do what he wants. So and that's just a common procedure. I mean, there are different reasons why you separate sheep from goats. If you want to shear the sheep, then you'd separate them probably from the goats to do that, or for any number of reasons. But it doesn't say that there's something bad about goats, something good about sheep. It's just an ordinary procedure that a shepherd would do at various reasons to do it. But he would separate sheep from the goats. Now, once he does that, then all the sheep are over in one place and the goats are over there. And then the Lord says at this judgment, it would be like that. He would separate the sheep from the goats. The minute he separates the sheep from the goats, at that exact point, there's only one thing about it. They're in two groups. They're not together. And then he says to the ones on his left side, probably referring to the goats, get away from me. I have no use for it. To the ones on this side, he says, enter into the joy of the Lord. Now, at that point is not when he decides who's right and who's wrong. Mm-hmm. It's just that point he separates them. Mm-hmm. So take right now, we live in the world. If you see a crowd of people coming, what kind of people are in that crowd? There's two kinds of people in that crowd.
Sheep and goats.
Yeah. Or the redeemed and the unredeemed. Mm-hmm. So you look at a crowd of people, can you tell which was which by looking at it?
No.
But the part of the judgment of the Lord, he will separate them. Once he gets them separated, will there be any doubt who's who?
No.
And then at that point he says, okay, here's what happens to this bunch, here's what happens to that bunch. Now, so what does judgment do? It simply carries out the result or the purpose for separating. That's all. And, we compare it to a earthly court trial, for example. You have one called a judge. And then you have a trial. You have people that have some kind of an issue. And, of course, the purpose of the trial, theoretically, and you can't go too far because it's so corrupted, but theoretically, the idea is to finally determine who's right and who's wrong. That's what it's about. And in any case, no matter what it is, somebody has something that they're right about, somebody has something they're wrong about, whatever. It could be anything from a traffic ticket to mass murder, anything. But in our human view of it, the judgment is to determine the facts, theoretically. But God's judgment is not to determine the facts. He's already determined the fact. His judgment is to declare, now here's where this is all going. So, when he says, for example, a very common verse that people have quoted thousands of times, clear out of its context, they'll say, we're not supposed to judge. Mm-hmm. Where do they get that idea that we're not supposed to judge? Where do they get that?
Well, the Lord said, do not judge lest you be judged.
Yeah. But he didn't tell you don't do judgment. He said, don't pass judgment that you can't pass. In other words, you can't say, we have an old saying, the pot calling the kettle black. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
Well, calling out somebody's speck in their eye when you got a plank in yours.
Yeah. He's really saying, all he says, the pot calls the kettle black. Which one's black?
They both are.
They both are. Why would one call the other one something? Because in the idea that he is really insulting the other guy, or he's saying he's belittling him, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. It's
so
trying to put him in the place before the judgment.
He's making a judgment that he can't pass.
Mm-hmm.
If he condemns the pot for being black, or the kettle for being black, and he's also black, well, what's he doing by doing that?
That's judging.
Well, he condemns the other guy.
He's condemning himself.
And he's just saying it's a self-condemnation.
Mm-hmm.
So don't do that. If you can't pass the judgment that you're using, in other words, you have to make judgment about anything.
Mm-hmm.
Every little thing you do requires, you have to decide, is this the right thing to do or not? Or is this what should be done now or not? Or how should it be done? Or anything. Or if any action you take, if you decide who you want to be a friend with, it requires a judgment. But whatever you make a decision about, you better make sure that you can do. If you're saying that whatever that guy's doing is wrong,
mm-hmm.
if you do the same thing, that's hypocrisy. You can't do that. So when the Lord says, don't judge, and the way it's translated into our language says, judge not that you won't be judged. Like, if you judge, then somebody's going to condemn you. That's not what he's really saying. Don't judge in a way that would condemn you.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, if you're passing judgment on something that you yourself could not stand, why, don't do that. But, so the world, or I say the world, sadly, many well-informed, well-intended believers say, well, we're not supposed to judge. It doesn't say that at all. If you don't do any judging, you can't make any decision whatsoever.
Right.
You couldn't scratch your head if you didn't make a judgment. You couldn't do anything without making a decision. And of course, in the Hebrew numbers, bet is the second number, or a second letter, that is. It also means a house or a tent. Now, the number 2 is a word in Hebrew that literally means 2 ones.
Say again?
It means 2 ones.
Hmm.
What do you have when you got 2 ones?
2.
You got 2. It's the first number that involves multiples. Because 1, which is aleph, that's just 1. What's 1 times 1?
1.
What's 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1? Out 10,000 times. It comes out to 1. You can't multiply 1. But if you take 2, what's 2 times 2?
4.
What's 2 times 2 times 2?
16.
Before long, you're going into astronomical numbers,
Yeah.
because it's a multiple. So 2 does something that it makes an increase possible. And you think about it, if someone says you're going to do a process, you say, well, there's 2 ways we could do this. There's 2 ways we could take care of this. So what do you have to do right now?
Make a decision.
Make a decision. Or if you say you're walking on a trail, you come to a fork in the trail, never been there before, but suddenly there's a fork, what do you have to do?
Make a decision.
So whenever you have 2 of anything, it involves making decisions. And decision is judgment, isn't it? In fact, they even refer to a trial coming up with a decision, don't they? Because that's really what a trial is about. And a trial is a judgment. So you have to judge, and you have to make decisions. if we weren't making decisions, if we were operating without making decisions, we'd be just like a puppet hanging on strings, you know. A puppet hanging on a string can raise his arms, legs, and walk, and he can wiggle around, do all kinds of things. Does he decide to do anything?
Mm-mm.
Why does he do it?
Somebody else is pulling the strings.
Somebody's pulling the strings. But we're not puppets, and God doesn't want puppets. He wants real people who have decided to be his people. Now, we can't make ourselves into his people, but we make the decision that says to him, I want what you got. Bring it on. And because he will not force you. God is a gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
He will not force you to do anything. He'll influence you. He'll pressure you. He'll urge you. He will beg you to do the right thing. But it all comes down to this. What do you want? You judge. If you can't judge, then you're nothing but a puppet.
I think I want to reshape the question a little bit because I don't think that the purpose of the question was so much as judging as it was the idea that, I mean, it's kind of a theological, why did God work it out that way? Mm-hmm. That we get our, sins redeemed when we believe. So why do we keep sinning? And, am I making any sense? So we got this sin in front of us. And, the religious people teach that, well, if you go sideways right now, mm-hmm. then day of judgment, you're not one of God's people.
Well, the Apostle Paul asked the same question in Romans. He said, what I want to do, I can't seem to do. What I don't want to do, I end up doing that. Mm-hmm. Why is he doing the things he doesn't want to do?
Because he's got flesh.
Yeah. We have two natures, and the minute you have two of anything, you got to decide which one you're going to go with, don't you?
Yeah.
So here's, when we're born into this world, everybody in the world, I don't care where they are or what the kind of people they are, they're all descendants of Adam. Is that right? I mean, they don't believe it, but they are.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're descendants of Adam. Now, Adam has a nature. God has a nature. Everybody has every living thing has a nature. A tree has a nature. A dog has a. What's a nature? What does that mean?
I mean, that's what you do naturally.
Yeah.
Without being taught it.
That is your natural way. And I don't understand this, but they call this thing called DNA. What's DNA?
It's the way that your chemicals in your body are built.
Okay, so it somehow determines whether you're going to be a corn husk or you're going to be a parrot, doesn't it?
Right.
I mean, something in this, I don't know how it is. You can pick up a little tiny seed, that comes floating down through the air. That thing has the potential to become a great big tall cottonwood tree. Yeah. I don't care how much they study it, God himself knows how that does. Mm-hmm. So you can take another seed, it might look just like this one, and it becomes a piece of alfalfa or something. I don't know, But everything has a nature. Adam had a nature. He's created. There's a natural way that Adam operates. Now, at first, and we read his story, for a while, everything was going good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We don't know exactly how long that was. Doesn't really matter. But everything was fine for a while. And then one day, the demonic spirit Satan shows up and really didn't do much except ask a couple of questions, right? Mm-hmm. He didn't lay a hand on him, didn't threaten him or anything. He just said, did God really say that, Surely he didn't mean that, did he? Something like that. So why did Adam buy into that line?
Because he made a choice.
Yeah, but isn't he a good man? How can he make a bad choice? Did God create him evil?
I don't think so, no. He created him with a choice.
With a choice. And because God is honest, he must provide an alternative to what's right.
Right.
Because if
you just have one, you don't have a choice.
Yeah, if God says, well, there's two ways to go about this, but they're both identical, then you pick one. What difference does it make? They're both the same. They have to be different, or it's not a real choice, is it?
Right.
So God's honest. He said, all right, I've created you with the ability to choose. You are not forced to be a right man.
Mm-hmm.
It implies that Adam walked with God in the cool of the day. I presume that means early in the morning, before it warmed up. He'd take a morning walk with the Lord. And we don't know how many times that happened or anything. So anyway, would he enjoy that?
Yeah.
We look forward to it every day.
Yeah.
Because it was such a beautiful time and everything. Now,
his teacher.
It'd be nice if he just kept on doing that forever, wouldn't it? But if he did, if you were to ask him, why do you do this every day? What would he answer you if you said, why do you do it?
Who, Adam?
Yeah. Why do you want to walk with God? Why do you do it?
Because I like him?
I like it. I like doing it. That's why. And, well, what if you didn't have to do it? Do you have to do it?
No.
You do it because you want to.
Yeah.
Does God make you do it?
No.
So God doesn't force you to walk with him, but he provides the opportunity. But because of his integrity, he must allow a choice. Because if you love somebody because that's all you can do is love them and there's no other choice, well then, what do you got going there?
Not much of a love situation.
Yeah. Because love is based on a wanting, a willingness to do something. And along with that, what is the definition of love anyway? How would you define that word?
Well, probably a dictionary would say something like intense affection or something like that.
Yeah, but that's a phony definition because that's defining a word with the same word.
Well, it's also, that's something positive we got from the Greeks. Nuances of the word love. So you got friendship love, you got erotic love, you got agape love, and you got familiarity love.
Okay. It says, we pray, may God bless you. What does bless mean?
Smile favorably upon you. Give you the good things that he's got.
Yeah. It really literally means, to bless means to kneel down. That's the Hebrew word Baruch. And it means to kneel down and present you with a gift. So it's not just giving you something, but it's kneeling down. So what does the kneeling down part got to do with it?
Kind of like when Yeshua kneeled down and cleaned the feet.
What's the idea of kneeling down?
Humbling himself.
Yeah.
Lowering himself.
You're putting whoever he is above yourself. You're making yourself subject to him. So real love means to kneel down and give a gift. Now, what could you give someone that would be worthy of the word love?
Yourself.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. You could give them a new ballpoint pen or something. That's nice. But real love puts you, everything you are, is offering to them. The Romans said the way you worship God is to present yourself as a living sacrifice. That's what love is. You can do a religious ritual without any kneeling whatsoever. In fact, much of what's done as religious ceremony or ritual is just to sort of compliment ourselves for how holy we are, right? Much of it is based on pride. But real, genuine love bows down and kneels before the other and gives them a gift, which is ultimately all you got, you know. So anyway, the concept that here's Adam, he's made, and he has a nature which requires him to make choices about everything. That's built right into him. Much of animal action, not totally, but most of it is just instinctive. Yeah. You know, crocodiles, what do they eat?
Meat.
Would they ever feed on grass or?
Probably
why not?
Because they eat meat.
Why? Why do they do
nature.
That? Okay, so you take a cow. Cows don't eat meat; they eat grass or hay. That's all. If you threw a piece of meat out to a cow, would he try to eat it?
No.
Why not?
They don't eat meat.
Why not?
It's their nature.
Their nature. So the animals do what their nature requires, and we call it instinct. Certain birds fly south every winter, and they fly back north for the summer. Do they make a decision to do that?
No.
Do they have a conference and vote on
No.
what day shall we take off for Florida or whenever? There's no decision. It's just in their head, and just when the day comes, they just go. And how do they know where to go?
Instinct.
Yeah. They don't know anything about navigation, and, you know, people try to figure it out, but birds will fly from the Arctic clear down to South America, and it'll go right exactly to the same place every year. You know, an airline pilot, fully trained, could not fly a plane from there to there without navigational aid. He'd never find it. Because it's not in the human nature to do those kinds of something in their nature. So here's Adam. He's got this nature, and the nature is to choose. God doesn't force him to do what's right. He shows him what's right. He offers him what's right. He tells him what to do that is right. But it's finally comes down, Adam, choose. So Adam makes his choice. Mm-hmm. So part of the Adamic nature is to choose evil. It just becomes our nature. When you're born out of Adam, you're going to do what Adam does. What does Adam do? He disobeys. He rebels against God. Now, that Adam, or that nature, I mean, sometimes referred to as the flesh. Mm-hmm. Well, by definition, what does flesh mean? What does that word mean?
Same thing as meat.
Mm-hmm. In other words, our physical body is made up, and the physical body is more than just a piece of meat. It actually, it has a brain. It has the opportunity to make decisions, to learn things, to think about stuff. It has the sense of feeling about things, reacting to things. It's all part of it. So I kind of call it the mental and psychological powers that control the body. The body itself is not evil. It's just your hands. If your hands pick up a tool, is because the hand decided to do that? Mm-mm. It just does what the brain tells it to do. If a hand picked up a gun and killed somebody with it, is the hand guilty?
No, whole body's guilty.
The body's not guilty.
Well, the human.
Yeah. What is guilty is what's in your mind or in your thinking, and that's why I call it the mental and psychological powers that control the body. The body's just a vehicle. You could drive this vehicle from here to San Diego and have fun, or you could deliberately plow it into a crowd of people and try to hurt somebody with it. Mm-hmm. Is it the car's fault if it does the wrong thing? Because it's just a machine. It just does what the driver tells it to do.
Right.
So this thing called the flesh is really your mental and inward, I guess you could call it psychological, or your mental powers that really direct the body as to what to do. But that came directly from Adam, and it's got his nature in it. Now, the apostle wrote that when we come into a relationship with God, we become a partaker of the divine nature.
Mm-hmm.
What's the divine nature?
It's that goodness. It's
what goodness?
It's the goodness of God.
Yes, because God has a nature. Now, a nature is not part of you. You could poke around in your brain or in your chest or somewhere. When are you going to find the nature?
You're not going to find it.
Because it's not a physical part of you.
Right.
It's just a way of defining, this is how you do things. This is why you do things. This is your attitude and your feeling. So a nature is just a way of describing the way you do things. It's not really a part of you. You can't take a nature out of somebody. You couldn't operate. Well, a surgeon couldn't find it in you. There's no place in you called this is your nature. But
not even part of the brain.
Yeah. So, but it's a way of saying this is how you do. This is how you think, and here's what you do. So, what does God do? What does He do, and what does He say, and how does He think?
Holy.
But
and
whatever
good.
His nature is, that's now what's natural to you. Do you have to be taught what is natural to you?
No.
You don't have to teach anybody to do what's natural because it's built in them. They will do it. Why does a dog bark?
Nature.
Yeah. Now, do you have to teach a dog to bark?
No.
Now, a little puppy, when he's first born, doesn't bark immediately, but pretty soon as things start to grow, he will begin to bark.
Yeah.
And why does he do it? Is he learning to bark? Is he someone telling him how to do it?
Mm-hmm.
It's just part of him. He just does it. And so that's the nature. So we've been made to be a partaker of the divine nature, which means that God has given into us His way of thinking and acting. But if that's all there was to it, why then from then on, everything we'd ever think or do would be exactly what God says.
Right.
But we've got the remains of old man Adam's nature in us, too. So we really have two natures. And, the old saying, it takes two to tango. So how many times have you felt yourself having an inward argument? I should do this, but I don't want to do it. Or I should not do this, but I really want to. And you have this debate going within you. Why do you have a debate going within you?
I don't know. Is that a conscious?
Because
you got
there's
the
two natures.
Yeah.
One of them wants to do what Adam would do. The other wants to do. Now, I say one. I don't mean there's two people in there. But there's two ways. You're only one. But you have a nature that wants to follow Adam. You also have a nature that wants to follow God. Now, so here's the part of you, not part of you, but your nature that wants to do right. What's it think of the nature that wants to do wrong?
It's two different things.
What does it think of it?
Well, it's opposed to it.
Yeah, it hates it too. And if the divine nature that's in you that runs how you think rightly, if you could, would you destroy that nature that wants you to do wrong? Would you?
Probably, yeah.
Probably.
No, you would.
Why?
because you want that. You want good.
Yeah. Well, then why
Kinda
don't you
like
do
Paul.
it? Why don't you do it then?
Because you can't.
You can't. Because if you could, now that's part of the way God made us. If you had the power to destroy the bad nature in you, then you'd become righteous by what you do, and you could say, well, what do I need with God?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And we'd go right back to Adam in the garden, where Satan comes in and says, why don't you be your own God? You know what's right. Just do it.
Right.
Why do you want to let God run? You know, when God told him specifically, you can do anything you want in this garden. Everything is here for your use. You do it the way you want. You name the animals. Here's the food for you. There's different kinds of fruit. Pick whatever you like. It's yours. You arrange the garden. You're the man.
Mm-hmm.
There's one thing that you don't want to do. What?
Eat the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil.
Why? What's so bad about that?
It reminds me of that magician's nephew that I just read about the tree that will give you it'll give you your wish, but also give you despair.
Well, why? What's the matter with the tree of knowledge? Don't you want knowledge? Isn't that a good thing?
Because it's not God's way. It's not by his invitation, and it's against his will.
Well, God knows the difference between good and evil, does he not?
Yes.
Do you know the difference between good and evil?
Huh. No. Not by nature.
Well, what do you mean not by nature? What does that mean?
It means you don't know.
Okay.
You have to be told it.
Well, where are you going to get that difference between good and evil?
From the Lord?
Yes. If you get it by your own effort, by seizing this fruit that you're not to, then you have just elevated yourself to God's position, haven't you? Mm-hmm. And you just can't. God says, I will not have that. So now Adam did, though. He ate that fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord said, he has now become like us.
Mm-hmm.
So has Adam become God?
No.
Well, the Lord said he's become like us.
Huh. That's a tough one. So if the Lord said it, it's got to be right.
So Adam's God now, huh?
No.
Well,
but there's a like to it.
Yeah.
Just like we're made in his likeness.
Yeah. When you like something, you're not that thing.
Right.
A photograph of you, if it's a good one, you can say, well, this looks just like you.
Yeah.
But it's not you.
Right.
And it's far from you, but it's like it. So it says now Adam knows good from evil because he's like us. However, he's not God. And so does God say, I'm going to destroy you?
No. He said that you will die.
What does that
You'll
mean?
be separated from, from this
You'll
life.
be separated. And so he throws him out of the garden. And the other thing, that Adam discovered something he had, part of knowing good from evil, something he had never known before. He suddenly knew. What? As soon as he took that fruit, he knew something he had never known
His
before.
nakedness.
Yes. All right. When he was in the garden walking with God, he was fully clothed.
Fully clothed with God.
With innocence.
Yeah, okay.
What's innocent mean?
Have no part of anything that's wrong.
Yeah, no guilt. Literally, the way it's saying you didn't do it, right? It's a negative word.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you've done anything good. It just means you did not do whatever's wrong.
Right.
That's all it is. You didn't do it. That's all it means. But it's not the same as righteous. Righteous is a positive, powerful word. Righteousness is strength. Righteousness can do things. It says one place, righteousness delivers from death. Innocence doesn't save you from anything, does it?
No.
Innocence can't help you do anything. Innocence can't. What does innocence do for you?
Well, it keeps you in the clear.
No, it doesn't. If it could keep you in the clear, then you'd never go wrong. Does innocence
Keeps
protect?
you from punishment.
No. Does innocence protect you? Well, Adam was innocent, but it didn't protect him from doing wrong.
Right.
It can't protect you. Innocence can't do anything at all.
Right.
It's just a word that says you did not do whatever's wrong. That's all it means. It doesn't do anything good for you. It doesn't make you right. It just says you didn't do anything wrong. That's all it says.
Right.
So as long as Adam was innocent, he didn't do anything wrong. What did he do?
Before he
While he was innocent, what did he do?
hung out with God.
Hung out with
trained
God,
animals.
walked with God, took care of the garden as God said he could do. He made all kinds of decisions about what he'd like. I think I'll have some of this fruit today, some of that kind tomorrow. I think I'll name that animal a hippopotamus and that other, and I'll call him a African dingo or something, you know. But so he did all kinds of things, but he did not do anything wrong. And that so along comes the evil spirit, Satan. Did Satan have a hard time getting Adam to bend?
Not really.
All he did was ask a couple questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how much did innocence protect Adam?
Not a bit.
Innocence is not a shield.
Right.
It didn't protect him from anything. He fell right through to it. So then the Lord said, okay, now the first thing that Adam discovered, having lost that innocence, is that he didn't have any covering. Now, he had been covered with innocence, but that innocence got ripped off of him.
Mm-hmm.
So suddenly he is naked.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't naked before. Naked doesn't mean you don't have clothes. It means you had nothing covering you. You had nothing to hide behind. You're vulnerable to whatever comes. Well, as long as he was clothed with innocence, there was no problem. But the minute the innocence got ripped off of him, he suddenly finds himself totally vulnerable. And then at that moment, he hears God coming for his morning walk. And what came to him that had never come before? At that exact moment, when he hears God coming.
Fear.
Fear. He said, I heard you coming, and I was afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Why is he afraid? He'd never been afraid before. Because innocence was a covering.
Yeah, because he knew that he had treaded on the territory.
Innocence didn't protect him from anything, but it covered him so that here comes God, and there was no reason to be afraid. He had nothing to go away from. So when innocence was ripped off of him, he became just covered with guilt then. And suddenly he finds, here comes God, and he's afraid because there's something here that I don't want God to know about. I don't want him to see. And so he runs and tries to hide in the bushes, you know. And in fact, before that even, he had made himself, he and his wife, coverings of leaves. All right. I asked a Sunday school group one time why they did that. And the pastor's wife said, because leaves are not very durable. He needed something more durable. Is it because the leaves need to be replaced by leather? Leather's better covering than leaves. That had nothing whatever to do with it.
One of them came from the man, and
Yeah.
one of them came from God.
Yeah. So he covered himself with self-effort.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's all religion is self-effort, isn't it?
Yeah.
So he covered himself with religion, meaning I will make myself look presentable, because what was my being presentable, innocence, that's been stripped off me. I need something on me that'll make me look good.
Mm-hmm.
So he puts on leaves. All right. So then the Lord comes, and of course, Lord knows everything's going on, but he asks him a few questions. And, whenever God asks anybody a question, he's inviting them to repent.
Mm-hmm.
A question is like holding the door open for you. Would you like to come in here? That's what a question does. Whenever a question is asked, what do you have to do?
Answer.
You got to answer. And how are you going to know what to answer? Whatever the question is, where do you get the answer?
Well, you get the answer from within.
From yourself.
Yeah.
Unless you've already gotten answers from God. But at this point, there's a separation. And didn't he die that day? The Lord said, the day you do that, you die.
Mm-hmm.
Not 600 years later.
All right.
You die right now.
Yeah.
And of course, most people don't have an idea what death means. They think it means you quit living or you quit existing. Adam went right on existing for hundreds of years after this, didn't he?
Yeah.
But the moment he rebelled against God, he separated from God. And so when God comes and throws a question at him, he can't answer truthfully because he's been separated from the only truth. Didn't the Lord say, I am the truth?
Yeah.
If you're separated from the truth, then what are you going to answer your questions with? Whatever you've got in your head, right?
Yeah.
And he just thrown innocence is gone.
Yeah.
So what's he going to answer with? He's going to answer out of that Adamic fallen nature.
Yeah.
We use the word fallen. I mean, it fell away from what God was. He was connected to God before. Now it has died from that. It's separated. So now he has to come up with an answer. So God says to him, Adam, where are you? And what does he answer? A true answer would be what?
I'm hiding in the bushes. 'cause
I'm over here
afraid.
hiding in the bushes. But that's not what he gave him. What did he give him?
He said, I am naked.
No, he didn't say that.
I forgot. I forgot, but I got my Bible right here.
Oh,
Okay.
you know what he said.
I know what he said.
Adam, where are you? The correct answer would be, I'm over in these bushes. He did not tell him that. He said, I heard you coming, and I was afraid.
Yeah.
What kind of an answer is that to the question, where are you? I heard you coming, and I was afraid. That's a strange answer for that question, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's really saying, I'm away from you, and I don't have the courage to be with you, so I'm separated from you. Is another way of saying it. So then, of course, here comes another. Now, God, of course, knows that's not true. He doesn't argue with him, does he?
No.
He just throws another question. You've been eating that fruit I told you not to. Of course, he knows that.
Mm-hmm.
Why did he ask him that?
Because he's inviting him to repent.
Now he said, have you eaten that fruit? If the correct answer would be what?
Yes.
Yes. That's not the answer he got. What did he get?
He blamed that woman.
No, he didn't blame the
He
woman.
blamed God.
He said, this woman that you gave me caused this.
Yeah.
He threw it right into God's face, didn't he?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that's hardly what you'd call repentance, is it?
Right.
But God didn't ask him no more question after that. What did he do then?
Turn to Satan.
No,
Hmm.
turn to the woman.
Turn to the woman.
Said, what about it? And she said,
That-
well, this serpent tempted me and I ate it.
Yeah.
So she tried to blame the serpent. She did not say God did it.
Right.
She blamed the serpent. Now, that woman was really confused. It says she was deceived.
Mm-hmm.
Adam was not deceived. What does deceive mean?
Means you didn't know any better.
Yeah.
You got fooled.
Yeah. In a way, deceiving might, if
Tricked.
you're deceived, you think you're right,
Yeah.
but you're not.
Right.
So you're very wrong, but you think you're right. So Adam knew that he's wrong. There's no question about that. But the woman was deceived. So when Satan offered her the idea, she bought into it because she thought that'd be the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
She really thought she was right. But does that mean she's innocent?
No.
Why not?
Well, that's on Adam, isn't it? You should have taught her better.
Well, yeah, but why isn't she innocent? She thought she was doing the right thing.
Well, because she broke.
Yeah.
Broke the command.
What you think? We have even a saying in our corrupt government: ignorance is no excuse for breaking the law.
Right.
Well, I didn't know it was against the law to drive 90 miles an hour and 25 miles on. Well, you did. So ignorance will not excuse you. It's not quite as bad as deliberately doing something wrong, but on the other hand, you still did wrong. So the ultimate, or shall we say, the bulk of the result of the evil came on to Adam. He bore the responsibility, and it's like you said a minute ago. He could have said to her, "No way, we don't do that." He could have corrected her, but instead he bought into what she'd been deceived by, knowing full well this is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't even reprimand her for it, according to the way it says. So, anyway, it became his nature to do evil. And, of course, that nature then has been handed down through everybody. So back to your question about judgment and so on. We would love to be able to conquer this old nature, but we cannot. If we could conquer it, then we wouldn't need God. But God built it right into us that we must depend on him, because the knowledge of good and evil, now he did say the man has become like us, meaning he knows good and evil now. But he's already told you what he does with good and what he does with evil. So his nature is to go after the evil, even though he knows what's good. So he knows the difference, and we have this thing that's sometimes mentioned called a conscience.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
I'm not sure. It's the way that it's a function of the mind. It is your internal reasoning structures.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the cartoons, it's those little angels on your shoulders, right from wrong, little angel or the devil on one side.
Well, yeah. The very word conscience, it comes from two roots, con, which means with, and science, or with knowledge. But I don't know exactly how they made that into a word, but it comes down to this. People say they have a guilty conscience. What does that mean?
It means they know they did wrong about something.
Yeah. And that may be a fairly good way to look at it, because conscience can be adjusted.
Yes.
The pirates, the old-time pirates, had a code of ethics that they went by.
Right.
Now, they didn't hesitate to rob, steal, and plunder and murder people, but within their little circle, they had a certain code they went by.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as they didn't violate that code, they were welcome in their club. Mm-hmm. Even these mad gangs that we have, they have the same sort of a thing.
Right.
They'll have a code that they go by. but it's very evil, even the code. But in their view, it makes the difference between what's right and what's wrong. The conscience can be adjusted. A conscience is kind of like a governor on an engine.
Yeah.
What does a governor do on an engine?
It regulates and keeps it in a certain spot.
Yeah. So you want this generator to run at 3,000 RPM. So you set the governor to control it at 3,000. Maybe it has a certain range. Maybe you can allow it to go to 3,100 down to 2,900. Well, what if you decide I want to run this one slow? We're going to run down to 2,500. You turn the governor down to that range. So the governor doesn't, it all depends on how you set it. Just like for the people that run the hospital over here, Catholics run it. What are they going to use for their code of conduct of how they run this hospital?
Probably an ethical standard set by the church.
Yeah, and so it'll be largely following church doctrine or church theology or something. All right, so you expect them to do that sort of thing. You go in there, they have a morning prayer comes over the loudspeaker, a priest or somebody does that, and if somebody needs some counseling, they'll have somebody that does that, and not bad. You go to Choku Charlie's bar. They have a code of conduct, don't they?
Yes, they do.
And you're allowed to do certain things, and certain things would be unacceptable.
Right.
It's the same as the Catholic hospital.
No.
It's quite different.
Yeah, quite different.
But they both have a conscience. They have a control method that keeps them within a certain range. How come their control is so different from the one at the hospital?
Well, because one of them is driven by knowledge of God, and the other one is just driven by, well, the objectives of being in those two different places are different.
It's whoever's running it, isn't it?
Yes.
And they've made
Well
a choice.
said. Yeah.
We want it to be like this. The other guy said, well, we want it to be like this. Now, so a conscience is like that. It's just something that tells you you're either going too high or too low, and it can be changed. So a conscience is not reliable. You know, you've heard people say, just follow your conscience. Just go by your conscience. Well, depending on how your conscience. If you tell the guy at Choku Charlie, just go by your conscience, they're going to do certain things. If you tell the guy at the hospital, go by your conscience, they're going to do certain things. But they're not going to be the same. Right. So just your conscience is not reliable to keep you right. It only keeps you within a certain range of accepted operation. And who determines that, you know? So when God said, the man has become like us, he has a knowledge of what's good and evil. Does that mean that his knowledge is almost like a conscience? Within a certain range, he knows this is good, this is evil. Choku Charlie says this is good, this is evil. The hospital says this is good, this is evil. Are they the same? No, because they've been adjusted. So you can't go by just the fact of saying you know what's good and bad. Well, it depends on what your definition of good and bad is. So anyway, so Adam is thrown out of the garden, and of course, this garden, some people think it's someplace over in the Middle East. It's not over there anywhere. I think the garden is simply the creation, the way it was made, the whole creation. And when Adam is thrown out of it, it doesn't mean some geographical location you can't go to anymore. It just means that world is no longer where you are. So Adam now lives in the world that we know everywhere. And there it is with Adam's nature everywhere we look, isn't it? And so he's thrown out. But then God says, well, if I just left it like that, what hope would he ever have? Threw him out, Can't live here in this kind of a situation anymore. Now you're going to live out here where trouble, trouble, trouble everywhere you look, right?
Yeah.
Is that how God wants it to wind up?
No.
If that were the case, then Satan could come to God and says, well, you thought you had a good deal going, but I messed it up for you. What do you think about that? And who would win the battle? Satan would have won.
Yeah.
That I wrecked what you made. God said,
Kind of
no,
makes him God, doesn't it?
I have something called redemption. What does redemption mean?
Buy something back.
Yeah, you buy it back. I'm going to buy it back. And what's the price?
Himself.
His own life. I got to lay my life down, but I will do it. Why? Why am I going to do it?
Because of love.
Because of love. Kneel down and give them a gift. That's what love means. So what's he going to give them?
Himself.
And he's going to give them himself, and that will then, that inward nature you have, that's the divine nature, is going to have something to rejoice about instead of something to be feeling miserable. Can the divine nature feel miserable?
No, I don't think so.
What do you mean?
Well, yeah, it can.
Isn't there a word that says, do not
Despair.
grieve the Spirit of God?
Right.
How, when you grieve the
Can
Spirit,
despair.
how does the Spirit feel? Miserable.
Miserable, yeah.
But it's not because he's feeling sorry for himself. Why is he miserable?
Because of love.
Well, what makes him miserable? He never feels sorry for himself. He feels sorry for you.
Yeah.
And it's your hurting and your suffering and your failure. That hurts him because, not because he's feeling it of his own self, he's feeling what it does to you. So he can certainly be grieved. But if we come to the place where redemption does its full job, and of course, ultimately back to the first start about the judgment thing, when the evil is thrown clear out, then that divine nature has something to rejoice about, doesn't it? And the grieving will go away. You know, there's a place where it says, I think it's in Psalms, grieving may endure for the night, but joy comes in the morning. Remember that?
Yeah.
When it says the night and then the morning is reference to resurrection, you know. We live in the dark world. It's nighttime in the world, and has nothing to do with physical darkness. It's just the spiritual situation of the world is ugly and evil and corrupt, so it's called living in the night. In fact, in the Psalm 23, walking in the darkest valley, you know, it's nighttime, but joy comes in the morning. Morning refers to resurrection, and so the grieving will go away. But right now, yeah, it's plain. Is the Spirit of God grieving now?
Yeah, occasionally.
Occasionally?
Yeah, probably all the time.
When does evil go on? Occasionally?
Yeah, all the time.
It's constant.
24/7.
Constant. Every speck of time in the,
A lot of people
every
are-
day is just evil going everywhere. It doesn't mean that's all there is, but evil never takes a break, does it? Is there ever a day off for evil? It's on duty full time, constantly. And the Spirit of God is grieved continuously over that. It's called the man of sorrows. Does that mean he's sorrowful once in a while?
No.
He
It's
is
his
the man of
identity.
sorrows. But he's also joyful because we're back to this number 2 again. There is this and there's that. This makes him grieve. That makes him joyful. Now, the righteousness of God is on duty full time too, isn't it? So he's constantly joyful over that, but he's also constantly grieving. We can't comprehend how can God feel one way and another exactly at the same time, but he does.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way it is. And to some degree, we even have that possibility. Is it possible for us to be grievous and joyful at the same time?
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be. What are you seeing over there?
I'm looking at that cabbie over there. It looks like he's smoking with a mask on.
Oh.
He sure is. Look at him.
Yeah, well, he's probably required to have a mask on all the time.
That's the first I've seen somebody smoking with a mask on.
If you don't light it on fire, I hope it's fireproof.
He's got his mouth down. He's got his mouth hanging out
Yeah.
of it. But
So, the idea that we have these two natures, and that's important to realize, is that we cannot control the old nature with the new nature. You do not have the ability to do that. If you could, then we'd be right back to the beginning. We wouldn't need God. We could just say, well, I know how to handle this. And we'd be right if we could. But the Lord said, no, you can't do it that way. So he gives him this coat of skin, which was simply some animal being sacrificed to provide a skin. And of course, that coat of skin did not take away his sin or didn't change him. It simply covered him. But it said something great. It had a tremendous message. And what's the message?
That God covers you.
Yeah, the fact that it was an animal that was sacrificed, a picture of the sacrificial Lamb of God, is it not?
Mm-hmm.
And that does not cover us. I tell people, your sins are not covered.
You're taken away, right?
Yeah. If they were covered, what would be under the cover?
Your sins.
Yeah. So you'd look okay. Well, that's all the leaves that Adam put on. They covered what he looked like, but they didn't change what he is, did they?
Mm.
And so we are not, if we were just covered so that we look good, well.
So God shares his nature with us.
Yes.
And
so
that's the good news.
And it becomes, if we're sharing the divine nature, then that new man, or it's referred to sometimes, the new man, has the nature of the Lord. And what does the nature of God do? I mean, what is it?
Love.
It makes him do everything God does. Can God ever do anything wrong?
Mm.
So if you have the divine nature, can you do anything wrong?
Not with the divine nature.
No. But the sad part is you still have the nature of Adam within you. So there's two natures. And that's why when you know you're doing something out of order, the new nature is grieved. It always is. And you'll always feel bad about it, because the new nature says, this is not our way. We can't live like this. But look at what we're doing. So isn't that what the apostle cried? I said, who's going to rescue me from this body of sin? Rescue me. The body don't need to be rescued, but what's running this body is the nature. Rescue me from that, because until I'm not rescued from that, I'm grieved. So when the apostle wrote that word, was he a happy man, joyfully rejoicing? He was miserable and grieved, and he cried out, who's going to save me from this mess? Why is he crying?
Because he wanted to be saved.
Well, he's not being saved, but being rescued from this, the work of this evil nature. But he says, who's gonna help me? I can't. I try to make it right. We always try to do the right thing, but when you try to do the wrong or the right thing, I can promise you'll do the wrong thing.
Right.
Because one way that we're made is that the divine nature does not have power over. I say the divine, I mean the new nature that we have does not have power over the old nature to stop it.
Right.
All we can do is present ourselves to God. And it says, is it Romans 5 where he says that we are to present ourselves to God as a sacrifice and our members as instruments. What is that, chapter 5, Romans? I think it is.
5, 6. Yeah.
You present yourself to God as a sacrifice and your members as an instrument of righteousness. That's what it says in our translation. Now, so he's got two. You yourself and your members. That's two different things. What's you yourself?
Who you are, your soul.
Yeah, with the divine nature.
Mm. Oh, okay.
You present that. You do not say, I'll handle this myself.
Right.
You go to God and say, I'm here with you. And these members that I live in, I'm also offering them to you as a instrument of righteousness. And the word that's translated instruments, as I understand in the old language, it meant like a weapon of war. In the early days, they had these big catapults.
Mm.
They were called war engines, or engines of war. And, of course, the modern equivalent would be artillery. And there's a story that I knew that in the Korean War, there was, and I think it was in a unit that I was connected with, the 90th Artillery there. Anyway, they had one gun that they were using, a big 90 millimeter artillery, and they were overrun by Chinese soldiers in the war, so they abandoned the gun.
Mm-hmm.
The Chinese captured. What do you think they did?
Use it against
They
them.
turned it around and started firing at the Americans with it until they ran out of ammunition. Then they couldn't get any more, so the Americans recaptured it, restocked the ammo, turned it back around and fired at the Chinese. 5 times that thing changed hands in the war. Now, the gun, they don't care. It has no thought. It just shoots at whatever you point it at.
Mm-hmm.
And so, who decides what that gun's going to do?
The operator.
Whoever's running it. If it's the GIs on this side, fine. If it's the Chinese on the side, too bad. So, when he says present yourself to God, that means within yourself, the new man, you offer yourself to God as a living sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
Which means, if you're a living sacrifice to God, what part of you do you hang on to?
None of it.
Every bit. I am yours, whatever. And I also got this body. Now, this body is capable of killing.
Yeah.
It's a weapon of war.
Uh-huh.
If it's under the control of the Spirit of God, what will it do?
Good things.
What?
Righteousness.
It's a weapon.
Mm.
It's a piece of heavy artillery. What will it do?
Destroy.
Destroy what?
Evil.
Yes. If this body is presented to God, it's going to be used to fight against evil. But if it's not, the evil will overrun, and then what will it do?
It'll be an instrument of destruction.
Against
Yeah.
who?
Against that body.
What body?
That flesh.
No, that's the instrument. That's the piece of artillery. If the enemy gets control of it, what will that body do?
Destroy the good.
What good?
It'll overshadow the good nature of the light, right?
Mm-mm.
It doesn't have the power.
You'll start screaming, crucify him.
Uh-huh.
Pilate, put him to death. We will not have this man ruling over us.
Yeah.
How far do you think this human flesh we live in could go? If we could do it, we would destroy God.
Hmm. Hmm.
And if you could destroy another one of the believers, that would hurt. But if you could do that, who is surrounded by a hedge of protection from God, then what do you have to do to get to that other guy?
Gotta get through that hedge again.
And what's the hedge?
The Lord himself.
And you would do it.
Yeah.
So it's so important that it's two procedure. You present yourself. That's the inward man that you are, that with the divine nature. You offer yourself to God. You don't say, I'll try to stop this evil nature I got. Forget that. You hand yourself to God, and with the idea that I got a problem here, but you're my only hope. You are the Redeemer. You are the Savior. You are the this and that. You're the hedge of protection. You're everything I need. So I give myself to you, and I'm offering this body that I got to you. Now, the body is just like a piece of artillery. It has no brains. It doesn't care. Your body will do whatever the inward man tells it to do, won't it?
Mm.
Your hands and feet. I mean, if you say, walk into a cat house and screw some whore, it'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
Body, you can't blame the body. It's not the body's fault. Whose fault is it? It's that evil-natured man who's within you, that a descendant of Adam. But you present that to God. You say, "This, you're the only one that can stop this evil in it. You're the only one that can control it. I can't control it.
Yeah.
You can." So when a man has done that, present himself to God and the flesh to be used as a weapon or an instrument, it's just a machine. That's offering it to God. Then what happens?
God will use it.
And you start doing things that God wants to do. So one body can hand out good things to someone who needs it, another can destroy them. And is that because this is a good body and that's a bad body? But they got something running it that's different. The body, when someone becomes what we call a converted believer, say they've been living for 40 years and they become a believer, and what happens to the body?
It just keeps on going.
Does it look any different than it did the day before? No change. If you saw the guy, when the Apostle Paul was known as Saul of Tarsus, he was feared all over the world or the known world by the believers, wasn't he? Why?
Because he was a killer.
All right. So one day, he came into a relationship with the Lord. And now he goes back out there to those same believers, and they were scared.
He says, "Hey, I'm a friend now."
You don't look like you look just like you did the last time when I saw you hauling these people off to the lions. Was there any outward change?
He might have been smiling more.
Oh, he smiled plenty when they hauled him off to the lions. He was having fun.
That's right. That's right.
I don't think there was a licking bit of change in him. But very soon, what would they start seeing that would change their mind?
His actions were different.
He'd start doing things differently.
Yeah.
He'd start really reflecting the truth of God to them, and of course with his words and his actions and his reactions and all that. And but for a moment, the body itself is not changed. It's just like when the Chinese took over that American artillery. The gun looked just the same under their operators did on the Americans. Only difference was which direction was it pointing. That's the only difference, was it? And the gun, you can't blame the gun. It wasn't its fault. It just was doing what it made to do. It's who's running it. So when the Lord begins to run your life, there will come outward appearance changes after a while, because you just start handling things differently, But the main thing is that's what's going on within. And so one of the hard parts that people have to understand is this fact that we've got two natures. They can't. In fact, there are those who think we have three natures. They call it body, soul, and spirit. That's not correct. You know why?
Why?
Okay, you got body. You don't have a soul.
You are a soul.
You are a soul. The soul has a body. And the body is a possession. It's just something you got. It's not permanent, not in its present state anyway. It's temporary. It goes from being a baby to an old geezer after a while, if you live long enough. It's corrupted. It gets sick. It gets injured. It's lazy and whatever, You got that. What about this spirit thing? Is that something that is part of you? Which part of you is the spirit?
Drawing from the Hebrew, it's the nephesh. It's the living, breathing stuff inside.
It's
of you.
just being alive. That's all. What's the word for spirit in Hebrew?
Nefesh?
No, ruach.
Ruach, just like
Wind. Same as wind. Wind is just air, isn't it? But still, they're never called wind. What does it have to be wind?
It's that movement.
It's got to be moving. And the faster it moves, the stronger the wind. That's all. Wind means air moving.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it means. Or it can mean breath or breathing or being alive. So when it says Adam was formed of the dust of the ground, if you could see him formed, what would you be looking at right then?
Bunch of mud coming together.
Yeah, he looks like a man, but he's just a clay or mud object, ground object. He can't do anything. He's just a lifeless thing like a statue. And then it says God breathed into him. Breathed in it means he literally say blew into him, like wind blowing into him, and he became a living soul. So the spirit, it just simply means being alive, and of course it says God breathed his life into this man. Life, if you could take a guy to the hospital and have him, put him on surgery and find where the life is. I mean, life is not a part of you. It's just you either are alive or you're not. Mm. That's all. It's not part of you. You're not partly a spirit. You have spirit because that means you have life. But you are a soul. And by the way, how long do souls live?
Forever.
They never die. No soul ever dies. Mm. They may separate from this physical existence. That doesn't change who you are. Just like here we're sitting in this machine, and when we go home and turn it off, get out. We don't quit living, but we quit being in this thing. And this is like a body that we're in.
Yeah.
The spirit is the fact that you're alive. If you were just a mannequin sitting there, you could just stay there forever and nothing would ever happen. But so when God breathes life into him, he became a living soul, and that breathing only means spirit. That's all, life. He's got life. And so you're not partly body, partly soul, and partly spirit like people think. You are one thing, a soul. You indwell a physical situation. The Lord says the day will come when even the physical will be changed into a perfect one that's not subject to decay and so on. But even then, it's just a means, without a body, you're alive and real, but how can you relate to anybody without a body? How can a soul talk?
No.
Can it shovel dirt? I mean, what can a soul do if there's no body? It just exists. It can, if someone has passed out of this world, it says to be absent in the body, to be present with the Lord. The soul can communicate with the Lord and be rejoicing, I'm sure. But it still needs a body in order to relate to anybody. But spirit, that's not part of you. The spirit is the fact that you have life. Mm-hmm. And, of course, without life, you're just a clay form like Adam when he was first formed. He looked, if you could have seen him, he would look like a perfect man, wouldn't he? Only one thing about him, can't do anything because there's no spirit, there's no life. And so this concept that people are body, soul, and spirit, it gives a false concept there. They think there's three different things. I even heard people say that the soul is something evil about the soul. That's your humanity or something. But, if that's true, then, boy, that really puts some strange thoughts into it. So the soul is the bad part of you and the spirit's the good part. You know what I mean? That just there's nothing about that. Whenever the Lord speaks about soul, he's talking about one who is living because God put life into him. And so when he says, I've come to give you life that's more abundant, you already have life, but I'm going to give you a better life. So how many lives you got?
This one.
A lousy life and a better one? I mean, but your life that you have, said you're alive, but you're just a being that has the ability to move around, say things, and do things. But I'm gonna put the life that really goes somewhere, that does something into you, And so the better life that he gives you, he says, I've come to give you a more abundant life. Well, is there something in you that suddenly gets bigger and more strong than it was before? I mean, it's not have nothing to, a part of you. It's an experience that you have. I've come to give you a life that gives you relationship to God, that something to work to make you right. So these are things that I think a lot of theologians have kind of dreamed up stuff that just doesn't really add up, doesn't do anything.
Okay, I got another question.
Okay.
How do I pose this question? Okay, so it's about the household of the faithful, right? So the question is we got our kids, we're raising them up in the Lord, to acknowledge God, pray, read the Bible, and so this question comes from Alicia, and it's basically that it's us trying to come to the terms that we're kind of raising our kids differently than we were raised.
Yeah.
Because what we were taught was, all right, it's Sunday, we go to church because that's what we do.
Yeah.
And you don't take communion because you're not a baptized believer yet.
Yeah.
And, when you get to the age of accountability, then, you can make your own decisions, but you're still going to do what we got to do until you get out of here. But, you can make your own decision. You can get baptized, and then you can be a member of the church. And, since, in our house, we talk about God every day.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's the culture of our home. And, I would say it's more like, that Deuteronomy 6 type thing. So basically the question is we were taught this, and we don't have a script for what we're doing. So what do we tell our kids about that? Like some churches call it a confirmation type thing.
Yeah.
And, like we've hung out with some Anglicans, and, the teaching there is they baptize them when they're babies, and then they confirm them when they're older.
Yeah. Like the Lutherans.
And that's like a theological thing that we're going to raise them up in the Lord, and it takes care of that original sin thing. But then it also gives them that decision in life to respond to, whether, because they want to. So, anyway, you got any thoughts on that?
Well, I'm trying to kind of point your question down some. What are you trying to answer? What do you tell them, or what do you do, or what?
Yeah, because
well, for one thing,
it's a contrast in two ways of seeing things.
First thing we got to make sure that they understand is that we're not here to condemn anybody, and we realize that for all history of the world, people have done, the ones who want to be right, have tried to do what they think God wants them to do. Mm-hmm. And, of course, the world's religions have taken on 1,000 different forms. And each one of these forms, each one of these, we could call them denominations or different things of what we call religious things, they all have their list of rules and regulations, don't they?
Yeah.
And each one of them says, if you'll do it like this, well, this is the way it's done. And yet they don't agree.
Right.
Now, some of them sort of just slightly disagree. Some of them are vehement about it, you know. Some of them would murder each other over it. Some would just simply politely disagree. So it depends on how far away they are from each other. But we come down to this. What are we going to teach them? Well, we're just going to teach them what the Lord says. That's all. And, of course, if you're going to teach them Lutheran doctrine, well, then where are you going to get the Lutheran? You get from their catechism. You're going to get books on this stuff. If you're going to teach them to be a Catholic, they'll teach you how to do that. Or if you want to be a Mormon, you can do it that way, or a Church of Christ, or any of these. They all got their rule book, don't they? And so the first thing I'd say is, okay, we're not going to use any of those rule books. Where are we going to get our information from?
From the Lord and from the Scriptures.
Yeah. So we're just going to read the Scriptures to them. And, of course, it's not just reading it, but we got to really think about what is it really saying, you know? Why did the Lord give us the Bible? What is the purpose of it?
Point to Him. Teach us
there
who
was.
He is.
The King Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes. One thing he said, there's the making of books, there's no end, and much study is just a weariness to the flesh. That's in Ecclesiastes. What do you mean by that? There's books, there's no end.
There's always, the tendrils of knowledge are going to reach out, and it's never going to finish.
So every religious group's got their books, and they want you to learn them. And, of course, can either be really in a book form or simply in some written code or even just
unwritten like it is in the Church of Christ.
Or it can be like the Jews with their midrash and stuff like that. And it doesn't mean that everything they write is wrong. That's not what it necessarily says. But the problem is, what guarantee comes with any of it? Right. Much of it's just written on the basis of human opinions, and some of that may be right, but it's not reliable. You can't count on it. So the Lord gave us what we call the Bible or the Scriptures to give us something that we could look at that really tells it like it is. Now, people read that all day long and still don't get it. So how are we going to understand what's true?
The Lord will got to be our teacher.
So we commit our reading and our studying and whatever we're doing to God to show us, what does this really mean? The Lord always speaks in parables. That's one thing. I didn't realize that till a few years ago, that everything's a parable, and we know what a parable is. So when we read a story or a account or anything that's in the book, first thing we're going to think is, okay, a parable has a surface meaning, but there's also a deeper meaning. So it says in the first chapter of Proverbs that if you search for truth like hidden treasure, you will find it. That's a guarantee. You want your kids to have truth. If they have truth, what else do they need?
Nothing.
That's it. But how are they going to get it? It says right there, Proverbs.
By being taught it.
No, it doesn't say it. It says if you search for it,
seeking it,
treasure.
Yeah.
All right, how would you search for hidden treasure? You walk along looking at the sidewalk, hoping you'll find something on the sidewalk?
No.
Okay, the very word is hidden.
Yeah.
So what do you have to find anything that's hidden?
You got to dig.
You got to poke around in things. In part of the Seder, Passover Seders, they hide some matzah in between some things.
Kiefelman?
Yeah. And it's kind of almost like a game they play, but it's really, if it's done correctly, the purpose of it is to teach you that the truth is not just laying on the sidewalk to pick up. You really have to dig for it. So it takes a little time, a little effort, a willingness to really lay aside other things and just say, I'm going to find out what this parable really says. A lot of people, we go to church every Sunday and we sit in the third pew and the preacher gets up and lays his sermon on us and we all shake hands and go home. That's it for that week. Well, we go to prayer meeting on Wednesday night too, where we rattle off some prayers. And I'm not trying to knock people.
Mm-hmm.
I think many people do that really mean well. But isn't it like they're digging for hidden treasure? If I told a friend of mine just the other day, I said, if you got news somehow that it was believed that right in your backyard, some pioneers 200 years ago buried a trunk full of gold coins, and it's in your backyard. And so one day you decide,
Call
I'm
the
going to
gas
see
company.
you go out and you dig a little bit, and bang, lo and behold, you come up with a couple of gold coins.
Yeah.
What are you going to do then?
Dig harder.
Find another coin. Now what are you going to do?
Keep digging.
When are you going to quit digging?
When the yard is a big canyon.
It looks like the Grand Canyon but that's because you're digging for hid treasure. But when people go sit in a pew and listen to a guy yak for half an hour and then they go home, how much digging did they do?
I don't know.
They didn't even get their clothes mussed up. In fact, they wear their Sunday
best.
Why do they wear their Sunday best? Because they don't want to get dirty.
Yeah.
But if you're digging for hidden treasure, you're going to get dirty.
Yeah.
Your hands are going to get blistered. You're going to get blood on your hands. You're going to be a mess. But why would you do it?
Because you want it.
You want what that is. So the bottom comes out of this. How are we going to want that treasure? It says right exactly how to do that. One of the writings says, taste and see that the Lord is good.
Taste it just a little bit.
Now, what does that mean?
Means you're poking around in different places and, look, I found something.
Yeah.
Try it out.
You know, it comes down to this. You want to teach your kids. What makes them believe anything? They hear, if they go to a school, they hear other kids telling them, they hear school teachers telling them stuff. If they go on to college, the college students, they have their big deals, and the professors their stuff, and they got the codes of the school that they go to and all kinds of stuff. They got their politics, they got their everything. What makes them believe whatever it is that they're going to put themselves into?
They make choices.
On what makes them make a choice? What on what basis?
What they know.
Okay. And largely all our choices are made on past experience, aren't they?
Yeah.
We say, I found out that if you do it this way, it works better than if you do it that way.
Yeah.
So
Trial and error.
I'm going to do it this way, at least for now. Or if they say, that guy is such a delight to be around, I want to know what he knows. Why is this guy such a delight to be around? The other guy's a thug, you know. And so we go a lot by what we see, what the results are. So when he says, taste and see that the Lord's good, if you saw a piece of cake in a box, how are you going to know whether it's any good or not?
Tasting it.
And if you really like what you got, then what are you going to do?
You're gonna...
I want a big chunk of that, you know, and if I had that was good, how about some more? But if you don't like it, why, okay, thank you very much, but no thanks. So he says, taste and see the Lord. Well, what do you mean by taste? What do you do?
Gotta pick some of it up and try.
Yeah. So what your kids believe is largely what they see you believe. Now, if they see all you do is complain and whine and cry and crabby all the time about everything and pick and fault with every little thing, are they going to want to be like that? Probably they'll resent
But they
you.
will be for a while.
They will, because that's
yeah,
the way
that's
it
what
works.
they'll pick up. Yeah.
But they'll blame you for their problems if they do. On the other hand, if they see that you are enjoying what you're learning and that it tastes good to you and you want more of it, and when you do learn something, you say, let me show you about this one here, and take a bite of this stuff, see what you think, And you really think about it, God doesn't try to make you believe anything. He just shows you stuff that's good. And he says, taste it, here, take a bite of this. What if you don't want to?
Then you don't have to.
You don't have to. And I'm sorry, but there are millions of people who wouldn't give it the time of day, even though it's right in front of them. Here the world is just falling apart. People desperately need the truth. And what do they go for? Instead of going to the truth, they go to their political systems, or they go to their religious systems, or to their education, or they watch football games or anything to just somehow try to fill in the blanks. And none of it works. It's all just a failure. So more and more problems develop. It gets worse and worse and worse. And it seems like, I remember years and years ago, and we made so many terrible, terrible mistakes. I did so many things I wish I could change. But we did have a habit in the old days when the kids were young. They were all going to school. And before they went to school every morning, we'd have a breakfast, and we would read a little bit out of the Bible, and we would just pray, a short prayer. And sometimes the neighbor kids down the street would come up. They'd walk up to the school bus together. And sometimes the other kids would get there, a couple of them, and would get there a little early, and they'd come in and sit with us. And I remember one of those other kids said at one time, I wish my dad would teach things like that to us. That's what he said. Something like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know whatever became of that, but why did he say that?
He tasted it.
And he took a taste, and it was
He said, this
probably
is good.
what he got at home was reprimands or any other thing, who knows what. People telling him they're no good, or, if you don't do this, you're going to be in trouble or something. Just nothing that lift them up or encourage. So my guess is that your question goes back to, how do you get the kids to see it? Well, first of all, they better see it in you, that you really care about those things, and when you do find something especially good, what's the matter with telling them about it, and they are going to hear things that they probably wouldn't get anywhere else. And many folks will go to a regular church meeting. My son Dale said, how come you don't go to a regular church? He told me that. How come you don't go to a regular church? What's a regular church? Well, I know what a regular church is. It's the typical theater-style setup with the show up front and the audience out here. And there's where you do with your money when you come. And the guy up front will tell you, here's what songs we're going to sing, and here's what we're going to pray. And you're just there to observe. Mm-hmm. Maybe you enter in with the singing a little bit, but it's really
kind of like going to the movies.
It's just a show, and I'm sorry that I don't mean to put people down, but that's what I think of as a regular church. But and not that we always do everything so right either, but instead of just going through a ritual program, what's the matter with just seeing what these words really say? And it takes time. You can't just read a chapter a day and call that digging for treasure. You may take one word, better sheath, teach them what that means, or teach them what the letter Gimel means, or something like that. And my guess is they're not going to hear that in most places, even in the religious system. They don't teach. Most of what preachers call their sermon. And by the way, where do you see anywhere in the Bible where anyone was supposed to preach a sermon?
Acts 20.
Well, okay, what did you read in Acts 20?
Where Paul preached till midnight.
Did he tell anyone else to do that?
Until somebody falls out the window.
Do you see written where it says every church is supposed to have a preacher hired to do exactly what the Apostle Paul did?
No.
It doesn't say that. It just says he did it.
Yeah.
Okay. Philip went down the desert, met the Ethiopian. Did he tell everybody you got to go out in the desert and meet the Ethiopians?
No.
In fact, if you read the book, did anyone ever do that again? Ever?
No.
Or that you're supposed to go to Cornelius' Roman soldier's house. When did he tell anybody to have to do that? Only one guy, Peter. He did it. Great things happen. Fine. What comes out of this, when Peter, that's part of our story for number 3, because there was 3 guys came to get Peter up there. It was a 3-day hike up to Cornelius' house. And the vision of the unclean animals came to him 3 times. Okay, when that story began with Peter going down to visit his friend named Simon, who was a tanner. He made animal hides into leather. Now, he stayed with him a few days, so he goes up on the roof of the house before lunch. Now, they would do that because it'd be kind of cool, a little breeze. It was so hot there, So the roofs were kind of made like a patio deck that you could go up on. So he's up there waiting for lunch. Apparently either Simon or his wife or somebody was down there fixing lunch for him. And it said he was hungry. So he's looking forward to getting lunch. What's he thinking about right then?
Food.
And his own feelings, right? Is he thinking about Roman soldiers or about the gospel or about anything? He's just thinking, I want some lunch. That's all he's thinking. So the Lord says, okay. And he sends this, the apostle goes into sort of a trance or something. And he sees this very strange vision. A big net full of unclean animals coming down. And the Lord said to him, kill and eat. There's your lunch.
He said, not so, Lord.
How come he said not so?
He said, because I've never had anything unclean.
Why not?
Because he's a good Jew.
He's an Orthodox Jew. The Torah clearly says, without any doubt, you do not eat this stuff. Who made that declaration?
Moses.
No.
God.
God did. God said to you, do not eat this stuff here. Mm-hmm. Never. Mm-hmm. Then he turned around and told him to go ahead and eat it. So which is it? God's just, he's denying himself. You can't depend on God. One time he tells you to do something, next time he says don't do it. Well, how do you know what to do?
He's got a point. Lord's got a point.
Did he want Peter to eat some of that unclean animals?
No.
Why not?
Because he was trying to teach Peter.
Yeah, he clearly said, this is not to be eaten. So when he said, go ahead and eat it, he didn't mean, I want you to eat this. He said, you're hungry, aren't you? Eat this. Does he want him to eat it?
No.
Peter says, I never eat that kind of stuff. The Torah says not to do it. I'm a believer in the Torah. I'm an Orthodox Jew. I can't eat that. Then what happened? Right then.
He took the vision away.
It went away. Yeah. Okay. Then it comes back. Same thing. 3 times.
3 times.
When did Peter ever eat any of that unclean meat?
He didn't do it.
And then the vision went away. All right. God say, well, I tried to get you to eat it, but you refused to do it, so I won't even give you anything. Is that what the God said?
No.
No, he said, really, you passed the test.
Yeah.
Because this was to say, okay, you're hungry. Here's some stuff. Eat this.
Nope.
Can't do that.
Nope. I got boundaries here, Lord.
And I got them from you. I know that this is not what you want. So why are you showing me this? It's for me to see, am I willing to forgo what I'm hungry for to do what you want done or not, So anyway, soon as that vision went up for the third time, suddenly there's banging on the gate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 3 Roman soldiers. Now the Romans, they were the ones who had overcome the Greeks and taken over the tyranny over all the Middle East and the whole known world. And they were not nice guys. They were mean generally, not always, but the Caesars were, selfish, greedy individuals who didn't hesitate to destroy anybody to get in their way. So these the Romans had just finished crucifying the Lord not long ago, and Herod, who was one of Caesar's puppet kings, had killed John the Baptist and probably many, many others who died. So Peter sees 3 soldiers at their door. What does he think?
He's in trouble.
What's he think?
He thinks he's in dire. He thinks he's about to die, probably.
Yeah, they're coming for me.
Yeah.
And if you could look at him, does he look like a man that's thinking about lunch?
Not anymore.
His hair's standing on end. He's terrified. No. He's trembling. I mean, he's scared. People, I think they make light of that.
Yeah.
But these Roman soldiers represented a tyrannical government who just killing thousands of the Lord's people, or hundreds of them anyway, and now they're banging on his door. He surely thinks that these guys are coming for me, aren't they?
Yeah.
And not for good.
Right.
All right. But the Lord says to him, don't be afraid. I've sent them. Am I sending them to you to punish you for not obeying me when I told you to eat this unclean stuff? No. He's really saying you passed the test. I wasn't trying to find it. God never tries to find it. But I want you to know that even your hunger is not going to make you do something you know you're not supposed to do. But so right now, I've sent these Romans. They're my guys. Don't be afraid of them. And of course, that's something that the Lord says almost every time anybody from God ever appears, an angel, the first thing they say is, don't be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
So these guys, these Roman soldiers, whoever they were sent by God himself. So they invite them in, and they stayed overnight, and they ate with them and everything. And the next morning, the soldiers got, and God says, go with them. Don't be afraid. Go with them. Now, normally, if you walked off with Roman soldiers back then, where do you think you're going?
Nowhere good.
You're going to the death camp or something, aren't you?
Yeah.
But the Lord said, don't be afraid. You go with them. I sent them. Now, does Peter trust God?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. The reason he would not eat the unclean meat is because he trusted God. Now, that really was unclean meat, and it fully met the description in Torah. You do not eat that kind of stuff, ever. Okay, so now Peter goes with these 3 guys. Does he know why he's going?
Nope.
Only one thing he knows for sure is that God said to go.
Yeah.
And now the last time God told him to do anything was eat that meat. Now he's telling him to go with these guys.
Yeah. That was an easier thing to do than eat the meat, right?
Well, he couldn't eat the meat, and because he knew why he couldn't, because Torah said, but he doesn't know why he's going with these Roman soldiers. But the Lord said do it. So he's going with them. But what's he thinking about as he's going? It's a 3-day hike, by the way, from Joppa up to where the Cornelius place was. What's he thinking about during that 3 days?
What's going on here?
Yeah. And what's that strange vision about unclean meat? Has anyone, I mean, he's an Orthodox Jew. Would anyone ever knowingly offer him unclean meat? Especially not from God, but, and he would, normally that'd just be a routine part of his life. He wouldn't even think about eating things like 3 times this thing came to him. So now he's on this trek up to where Cornelius' place is. He doesn't know what to think. So he's just, all the way I can picture him, not even talking to these soldiers, just thinking in mind, what in the world is all this about? Why am I going with these guys? What was that about? He is one confused, puzzled guy, isn't he? But one thing we know he's got going for him, he's obeying God, isn't he? He obeyed God about the 3 visions of unclean meat. God said to the Torah, you don't eat that. And this, bringing it down to him and telling him to eat, was not really saying, God saying, I want you to eat this. He's saying, how much do you believe what I've told you? Are you willing to stick with what you know to be true? You're already hungry. But now, if it was a Gentile there, they'd eat it. Probably perfectly good. For example, there might have been pigs in it. Gentiles eat pigs, don't they? And it's good. Ham and bacon and pork chops.
Yum.
You wouldn't have any problem getting a Gentile to do that, but you tell a Jew to eat that, and he's going to say, God does not want that. I will not do it. Okay. So now he's on his way up to Cornelius's, and it's a 3-day hike. He gets to Cornelius's place, and now Cornelius is a Roman soldier. He's some kind of an officer, captain or something over a bunch, and but he's a Gentile. And one thing the Jews never do, is go into a Gentile's house.
Yeah.
That is an Orthodox Jew, because the Gentiles are the outsiders. They're the goyim.
Yeah.
You don't go into their house. We go only into the Jew's house. So here's Peter. He's standing at the door of Cornelius' house, and the Torah tells him, do not go in there. Actually, the Torah didn't say not to go in there. That
was just their rules.
But
right?
that's their rule. The Jews don't go in there. Yeah. It does say to the Jews, you're not to intermarry with the Gentiles. You're not to join in with their customs. You're to be separate from them. So they interpret it to mean, I have nothing whatever to do with them. And you can't go into their house, because that would be to join in with what they're doing. So he's standing at the door, and Cornelius probably came out to meet him. And Peter says to him, may I ask why you've called for me? Now, that's a reasonable question, isn't it? Because, for one thing, he can't even imagine. Why would a Roman army officer with soldiers ask him to come to his house? It's just absolutely unheard of, isn't it? In fact, the only thing he could think, he brought him here to kill him, but if they wanted to kill him, they'd have killed him in Joppa. They wouldn't have brought him all the way back up there, unless they wanted to make an example of him or something. But so he's completely out in the dark. He doesn't know what's going on. Why have you? And he's very polite. May I ask you why you sent for me? What does Cornelius say?
He tells him, I forgot exactly what he said.
Well, he says, I just want to hear what God has given you to tell me. I just want to know what God had you here to tell me. Well, what's Peter been thinking about for 3 days?
Those animals up on the roof.
That's all. Not one word from God about what to tell Cornelius. I can picture Peter saying, what? But he did something right then he had never done in his life before, ever. Never dreamed he ever would do it.
Reach out to a Gentile?
No. He stepped into his house.
Yeah.
And when he stepped through the doorway, all of a sudden, the answer came to what that vision of the animals was about.
Mm-hmm.
What did it take to make the answer come to him?
Stepping across, just being willing to walk in the way of God.
Willing to step into the room where the Gentile lived. And when he did that, suddenly he saw something. He got the answer to what those visions of the animals was about. He said, I am not to call any man unclean. Now, when he had called those animals unclean, he wasn't thinking about men. The animals were unclean.
Mm-hmm.
You're not to partake of them. Was he wrong to call those animals unclean? They were unclean. He was not wrong. But what was his heart attitude?
Towards men? Or
If you asked Peter, what do you think about a Gentile, what would he say?
he's unclean.
They're unclean.
Yeah.
I can't eat unclean meat, and I can't have anything to do with unclean people. If they are unclean, then I have no business being in this house. Then why is he there?
Because the Lord has something to show.
What did the Lord say to him right then?
Let me look it up. He said that don't call any man
Yeah,
unclean.
you're close enough. Remember, he didn't really say that, but Cornelius had said, I want you to tell me what God has said to you.
Yeah.
Now, how did God say to Peter, don't call a man unclean?
Through that vision?
Through those three visions.
Yeah.
He called the animals, they were unclean, but he also called Gentiles unclean. So he said, I can't make Cornelius to be one of those netfuls of unclean animals. That's what I would have done. But when I stepped over the threshold into Cornelius' house, it doesn't say that God literally said anything to him, but it came to him what God was giving him, because Cornelius' question was, I want you to tell me what God has said. Where does it say when he first met Cornelius? I can't remember reading it.
Cornelius had dropped down at his feet and worshipped him.
Oh, no, back up a ways.
Okay.
When he first got there.
Cornelius, a centurion, an upright and God-fearing man who was well spoken of by the whole Jewish nation, was directed by a holy angel to send for you, come to his house to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
So invited them to be
Read
his
that
guests.
part again.
Peter went down to the men and said, I am the one you're looking for. What is the reason of your coming? And
Okay.
They said,
Why don't you read it with some inflection? You read it like it's the most boring stuff you ever read. What did Peter say?
He said, I am the one you're looking for.
Okay.
What is the reason for your coming?
Is that what it says?
Yeah. He said, what is the reason for your coming? To the men. Spirit said, arise and go down and accompany them. So the Spirit told Peter to go down.
Yes. Okay. So, I can't hardly read those little. Let's see.
So Peter was pondering the vision.
Okay. So this is all he's thinking about while he's going. He's pondering. And when what does ponder mean?
Thinking about it really.
I mean, you're just soaking it up, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay. The Spirit said, what does it say?
The Spirit said to him, behold, 3 men are looking for you.
Okay. So is God speaking to him?
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably not audibly, but this is within. Now go on.
Rise and go down and accompany them without hesitation, for I have sent them.
Okay.
And Peter went down to the men and said, I'm the one you're looking for.
Okay.
What is the reason for your coming?
Oh, okay. So he asked them, the soldiers, why are you coming? Okay,
Yeah.
now read on.
And they said, Cornelius, a centurion, an upright and God-fearing man.
Okay, this is the soldiers who came.
Who is well spoken of by the whole Jewish nation, was directed by a holy angel to send for you to come to his house and to hear what you have to say.
Okay, so Cornelius was told by the Spirit of God to call for Peter to hear what he had to say. Mm-hmm. Now, all Peter's been doing is pondering this vision, right? Mm-hmm. Has he been planning a sermon for Cornelius? No. Has he got it in writing? Has he even thought about what he would say to him? Okay, now what does it say then?
So he invited them in to be his guests. Ooh. Never noticed that one before.
Yeah, the soldiers stayed overnight with him
and then the next day he rose and went away with them.
Okay.
And some of the brothers from Joppa accompanied him.
Okay, so there was more than just them. There was a few others.
And on the following day they entered Caesarea.
Okay.
Cornelius was expecting them and had called together his relatives and close friends.
Okay, why was he expecting him?
Because he wanted to hear what he had to say.
Well, because he sent soldiers out to get him, and those soldiers would obey him.
And it all started with a holy angel.
Yes.
So when Peter entered, Cornelius met him and fell down at his feet and worshipped him. But Peter lifted him up and said, "Stand up, I too am a man." And as he talked with him, he went in and found many persons gathered. And he said to them, "You yourselves know how unlawful it is for a Jew to associate with or to visit anyone of another nation. But God has shown me that I should not call any person common or unclean. So when I was sent for, I came without objection. I asked then why you sent for me." And then Cornelius said, 4 days ago, about this hour, I was praying in my house at the 9th hour. And behold, a man stood before me in bright clothing.
What time is the 9th hour?
9th hour is
3 o'clock.
3 p.m.
This is the number of study of 3, see? Everything is 3.
Yeah. And 9 is 3 threes.
Yeah.
Behold, a man stood before me in bright clothing and said, "Cornelius, your prayer has been heard, and your alms have been remembered before God. Send therefore to Joppa and ask for Simon, who is called Peter. He is lodging in the house of Simon, a tanner, by the sea. So I sent for you at once, and you have been kind enough to come. Now therefore, we are all here in the presence of God to hear all that you have been commanded by the Lord."
Okay. We want to hear what you've been commanded by the Lord.
Yeah.
What, so far, has God told Peter to say to anybody?
Nothing.
But there is a word there. The command was in the form of those 3 visions. Go ahead and read the rest of it.
So Peter opened his mouth and said, "Truly I understand that God shows no partiality, but in every nation anyone who fears him and does what is right is acceptable to him."
Okay. So what was Peter doing right there when he said all that?
He was interpreting.
Exactly. He's interpreting the vision, isn't he?
Yeah.
So what did the vision say to him?
It said that it's those people who God is calling under every nation.
Yes. So these people that he refers to there, are they unclean?
No.
No. They are not unclean. It doesn't mean they're righteous, but it means if they were what is pictured by those unclean animals, they would be absolutely forbidden and unacceptable, and you could not even step into their house.
Right.
You couldn't even talk to them. I mean, you're to avoid them. And so he said, what the Lord is really showing me is I can't call, it had nothing to do with food. It has to do with his attitude toward the Gentile nations, isn't it? Mm-hmm. He's an Orthodox Jew. Does the Lord say you can't be a Jew anymore? Mm-hmm. He just says, if you really understand what I meant and believe it, you're not a Jew to avoid them or to shun them, but you're there to serve them. You literally are to kneel down to these people and give them a gift. That's what blessing means. So what gift does he have to give to them?
Good news about Yeshua.
Yeah, whatever the Lord gave him to say to them. Now, now the
That's what
story.
Yeshua told them that he would give them words.
Yes, and when you think about it, from the time this story began with Peter visiting this guy named Simon, what in any of that did Peter have any idea who he was going to be talking to or what he would say to anybody? The only thing we know about him while he's down there, he's hungry, he's waiting for lunch. That's about it, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what we know about him.
Mm-hmm.
Very little else. Doesn't say anything he did. This guy Simon, whoever he is, the tanner, obviously one of the people of the Lord, but did any word from that guy?
Mm-mm.
Nothing. Anything that Peter told him or anything they did, just nothing. The only thing that matters is that Peter is waiting for his dinner, and the only thing he can think about is food.
Mm.
And there's nothing particularly wrong with that, but the need, even though he did need a dinner, and no doubt got it because they stayed overnight with him, so they probably all ate, even those soldiers. And it said some other brothers when they may have had a whole crowd there for all we know.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole point was everything they were doing, and nothing wrong with all that. But if they just went on doing what they were doing there, Peter would just always be an Orthodox Jew who rejects Gentiles. That's what he'd be.
Mm-hmm.
And how about Simon and all those other guys? They'd all do the same thing. It said there was other brothers who went with him. What would they do? Same thing.
Yep,
They're just Orthodox Jews who would do the Orthodox Jews things. They would reject the Gentiles. What hope would there be for any of these Gentiles?
None.
Because it's through the Jews that truth comes. How come we know anything? Where'd you get this book from? This came from the Jews, didn't it?
Yeah.
Without them, we'd just be totally lost.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I tell Jews that we owe you our thanks, and I appreciate it, and our lives are because you did what God said to do. You may not even know why you did it, or you may not even believe you did it, but you did. So anyway, so now he goes up to Cornelius. Now Cornelius, we don't know much about him except what his own soldiers. What did his soldiers say about Cornelius?
He's a good man.
He's a good man. He's a Roman soldier, and we don't know what they mean by good man.
Yeah. But they also played on Peter's status as a Jew, and he said he's got a good reputation among the Jews.
Yes, he does. But of course, to a Jew, even though he prayed and even though he built a synagogue, and I think it said that, and he did a lot of good stuff, the real sticking point for most Jews would be, but what about the Roman soldiers in general?
Mm-hmm.
They are tyrants. They crucify us. Many, and they tax us unrealistically. Why did Joseph and Mary take the baby or take her to Bethlehem? It was all because of the Roman tyranny, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And that would be the overwhelming thought. Now they told that guy another nut. The soldiers recognized that this Cornelius really was a genuine man. We don't know what he was like. Don't know anything else about him except what they said. But he was a Roman officer. We don't know, one of the officers at the crucifixion said, surely this was the Son of God. Now, this guy may have just participated in the crucifixion, the cruelest thing you could do to anybody, and then turn right around and acknowledge the Lord. The Lord made a point of noting that this Roman officer, probably the guy in charge of the crucifixion, acknowledged the Lord. What does that do to that guy?
Puts him in a seeking position of the Lord.
Well, the Lord said nobody could recognize that the Lord is Yeshua is the Lord unless the Spirit gives him that.
Yeah.
So why did that Roman soldier say that? Surely this was the Son of God. Somehow he got it from the Spirit of God. That tells me, I don't know what that guy may have done or how many crucifixions he had to do with, but he's God's man, I think. I don't see why not. Why would God bother to tell you that he said that? Pontius Pilate made a game out of it. Oh, this was the king of the Jews. That's not that he believed that, but that was the indictment against him. But he said that really to mock the Jews is all it was. Here's your king, this thug that we just crucified. And that was an insult to the Jews. They tried to get him to take it away, but wouldn't do it because he was really enjoying his trick there. That was Pontius Pilate. But this soldier who said, surely this was, that's a different view altogether. This is not a mockery statement. This is a statement of a sudden realization of what's true. And I don't know. I can only presume that that brought him into the Lord's people. But anyway, this Cornelius guy was obviously a very respectable guy, but at least he was respectable to Roman soldiers. We don't know what he may have really been for the Jews, except that apparently he treated them fairly and everything. But that's not why Peter went up there. But this is a man who, Peter was hungry. That's why this whole thing started. He was hungry. Hungry for what?
Food.
Now, Cornelius was hungry too.
He was hungry for the truth.
He wants truth. Yeah. And how hungry is he?
He's hungry enough to send out soldiers to help him seek.
You know, they had to hike down there and hike back, and there's, I don't know whether that cost him anything. I suppose it did.
Sure it did.
But it took part of his troops away from him for personal reasons. In the political world, they would have hammered him for that, wouldn't they? They would. Oh, you can't dare use political things for your religious beliefs or something. I mean, and the other thing about Cornelius was, from what that says, if their description of him was accurate, he would be at odds with the general Roman system, wouldn't he? Because he does things that the Roman army does not normally do. But anyway, the whole concept was that Cornelius had a genuine truth, a desire for truth. And I think he fell into the category of searching for truth like hidden treasure.
Yeah.
In fact, how did he even know to go after Peter?
He had an angel come to him.
Well, yeah, but that's true. The angel, and of course, we say it says the angel, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Who said it was an angel?
Read
that.
The soldiers did.
What'd they say?
God-fearing man who is well spoken of by the whole Jewish nation was directed by a holy angel.
A holy angel. What do Roman soldiers know about holy angels? Is that part of the Roman street teaching?
No.
In fact, the Romans were believers in many different gods, weren't they?
Yeah.
So whatever or whoever that was, in my belief, it was the Spirit of God in the form of some kind of a visible appearance, because they apparently recognized that. But it was so great that they would have, their description of him as a holy angel, even if that's a correct translation, I don't know, but they were a sort of giving him an attribute of godliness, weren't they? And to Roman soldiers who don't normally even think that way, they wouldn't even know about that. So it shows that the Spirit of God was working in those guys some way, that they knew enough of truth of the Spirit to do what had to be done. They went for Peter. And apparently those soldiers that came for Peter were doing a faithful obedience to their officer, who no doubt sent them. If I understood that right, it says the angel came to Cornelius and said to send for him, didn't he? He didn't come to those soldiers. Maybe Cornelius told them that. But of course, they're soldiers obeying a commander. They don't have to believe what he says. They just do it.
Right.
But their description of him was very favorable, or very complimentary. And they're not telling Peter to do that as a reward for all his greatness.
All right.
Peter would not go out there just to pay a compliment to somebody. But I think what they're really saying, in whatever way they were able to say it, is that he's searching for truth like hidden treasure. And it's so important to him that at that moment, even though Cornelius was a soldier, a commander under Roman authority, what was the highest priority in Cornelius's thought?
Get to the truth.
I want the truth from God.
Mm-hmm.
And God told him that this man, Peter, has it. So I want it. And we don't know, we never hear another word about him after that, other than that, what briefly it said.
Imagine his life changed pretty radically.
Yeah. Whatever he was doing for the Romans up till then, he's going to have a whole new view of it after this, isn't he? Now, when did he become one of God's people?
A long time ago.
Yeah, not right then. Obviously, the Lord said he'd already heard his prayers and was responding to him. And so the question was, when did he become one of God's people? We don't know. How long has he believed this way? How long has he wanted to help the Jews or done the things that they said he did? We don't know. Maybe half his life or all his life. We don't know. But so he's one of those guys who could say, well, when did he get, now the Church of Christ, I know what they would say.
Yeah.
When did he get saved?
When he got baptized.
Yeah. If that's true, then God hears the prayers of people and responds to them with great favor.
So they can get baptized.
So they, yeah, I mean, you see what happens here. But
Yeah.
now when they baptize him, and you realize that's a Jewish tradition, by the way, that baptism, that goes way back. No one could go into the temple without going through a ceremonial washing. That's all it is, a ceremonial washing. And so Cornelius, now being a Gentile, could he ever go into the temple?
No.
There is a court for the an outer place for the Gentile, but they can't go in. They kind of stand on the other side of the fence, And but now he's recognizing something that is strictly a Jewish tradition, to take a ceremonial baptism or a washing, and they did that. Now, the purpose of the ceremonial washing is not to give you salvation, but it's to make you appropriate to enter into direct contact with God, is it not?
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, God had already heard his prayers. It says that quite clearly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, what's the purpose of the ceremonial washing then? To make him even more acceptable to God?
To make him fit for presence of the King.
Well, he's already got the Lord's favor. It's kind of like this thing we call communion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where they ever really got that word. It's not really a very good word for it, but the Lord said the Passover, they had this thing called a Seder, which is really a pretty elaborate dinner, isn't it?
Yeah.
But this thing we call communion is an extremely abbreviated version of a Passover Seder.
Right.
And it's not even done the way the Lord did it anyway. You know, at the time, they always read the scriptures in Luke or in some of them about he passing the cup around and he broke the bread and all that, as though that's all there was to it. But they were doing a Passover Seder. It was a complete dinner. You know, before that began, the disciples said, "Then where do you want us to go and prepare for the Passover?" Well, what they have to do to prepare for it?
Make food.
You got to put together a bunch of food. Now, that was the very day they were going to do it.
So they had to hustle.
Well, I've heard that it could take as long as a whole week to get preparations made for a proper Seder. Do you think their Seder was done properly?
Yeah.
Do you think those disciples did it?
Probably not.
He says, you go into the village and you'll find a man carrying a pot of water, which is very unusual. Usually the women carried the water, but he did it. Follow him, and he will show you a place that's all prepared. Now, we don't know anything about who that man was or anything about it, but whatever it needed was done. Do you think there was anything missing in that preparation?
No.
Every object, maybe they have certain kinds of bitter herbs, and they have lamb, and they got all this stuff. They got cups of wine or jugs of wine. They got matzah, and it all has to be properly made, and, you know, everything is ordered. You can be sure it would be done exactly the way it was to be done. And whoever that man was that they went had that all ready to go. The disciples didn't know anything about that, but they did, or he did. Anyway, so during this time when it says he broke the bread and you know, he said, here, you eat this, and this represents my body, and this cup is the blood and all that. That was just one little part of the Seder. It was not the whole thing. So this thing we call communion, they only talk about that one little part. They don't talk about any of the rest of it. And many of them would say, well, that's all been done away with. That's part of the Old Testament, you know. Well, it wasn't, but it was. Anyway, so back to the question, why do we do it?
Remember Jesus.
It said, for one thing, to remember. Does this, by partaking of that little piece of matzos and that little cup of grape juice, does that bring salvation to you? There's some who say it does.
Yeah.
The Catholics sure do.
Right.
Boy, they want to...
Back to that sacrament.
Yeah. And they have to have their special blessing over it and all this kind of stuff. Well, then why do we do it? If it doesn't bring you salvation, does it make your salvation better? Does it improve it?
I think it could be argued that it does, from the sense that you appreciate it more.
Well, you might appreciate it more, but does that make it any more than it is?
It doesn't make it stronger. Doesn't make it better.
If you're resurrected in the Lord and you don't know it, well, that's one thing. And if you do know it, it's better to know it, but that doesn't change what it is. If you have salvation, you got it, don't you? That's life. So then it doesn't improve your salvation. It doesn't make it happen. Well, then why bother with it?
To remember.
Why do we need to remember?
So we don't forget.
If we forget, what'll happen?
We'll go our own way.
And, you know, if you forget something that's true, you don't just stop your thinking. You keep on thinking.
You'll be thinking about something.
And the enemy will fill in the blanks. I can tell you that every time. If you forget what the Lord has done for you, the enemy will come along and say, it all fell apart. And the next thing you know, you're going to be discouraged, you're going to be confused, and you won't be worth nothing. It won't change the facts at all. It'll only change how you feel and how you are. And so if you're discouraged and you're afraid and you think you've lost your salvation, and then somebody comes along and asks you about the truth, what do you got to tell them?
Nothing.
everything you do tell them is going to be more discouragement for them, isn't it? So the purpose of the communion, or the what we call that, is to keep it in front of your mind. This is what really happened. And the same thing with this thing that's called baptism, this ceremony washing, is to remind you of what has already really happened to you in a visual, a visual, we call it visual aid, something you can see with your eyes to picture something that's within the spirit realm. Back to our talk about the Gimel, the third letter, it follows bet, which is the second letter. You know what a bet looks like?
A house?
Or like a tent.
Yeah.
It's got a thing down the bottom line, and so can you see this?
Yeah.
This side is open.
Right.
And you take an old bedroom tent, even today, some of them still do it. The tents are not like the American tent.
It's like a lean-to.
They're built with one side open, and of course they put it so the closed side's upwind, so the dirt and sand don't blow in, but they go in and out through this side. It's more of a sunshade than a weather tent. But anyway, a bet is built like that. It has an open side. And following bet is Gimel. Gimel pours out of bet. Just like when the soldiers drove a spear into the side of the Lord, what poured out?
Water and blood.
Yeah. And the life of the Lord poured out of his side, just like out of bet comes Gimel, the following letter. And Gimel is a picture of the life of the Lord, the three. And, it's just so amazing how these letters just picture all that. But bet looks, now in ancient Hebrew writing, what they used the pictorial script, a bet didn't look like that, but it does now. And of course, this modern script came into being somewhere after King David's time, I think. So probably about the time that the Lord said, "This is my body broken for you," they would have been using something like this modern, what they call square script, similar to that. But even the picture of bet, it is a tent, but it can also mean a body. A tent or a house or a body. The Lord refers to his people as his body and as his house. So out of the side of his house, his body, comes this life-giving flow, and then Gimel picks it right up and starts telling more about that. See, and it goes on. We'll get to Dalet next week, or Dalet, which means the door. And of course, the Lord is the door. Says, "I am the door." Queen Esther, that's not her real name.
Yeah.
Where'd she get that name?
That's
Esther.
from the place that she was in captivity, right? Or she got it from
Mordecai.
Yeah. Okay.
Her cousin, and an older cousin. And Esther is related to the name Aster.
Right.
Aster.
Like Easter.
Yeah. It has to do with this pagan god,
Right.
fertility god. Why in the world would Mordecai name her a pagan god?
It's one of those things in the Bible where the name doesn't match the person.
Why not? Is there a reason? There's a reason. It was
to hide her from being
That's
Jewish.
right, to hide her identity. It was a secret name. I mean, it was given to make the people think she's one of them, but she's not. She's a Jew.
Right.
Her Jewish name is Hadassah.
Right.
Hadassah has a meaning too. Now, the interpretation of Hadassah is myrtle. Myrtle is a tree that grows in the Middle East. It has a lot of good things about it, medicinal use and different things. So it's a very a symbol of the being alive. But Hadassah is spelled He Dalet, Samak. He means life, breathing, being alive. Dalet is the door. Samak means a prop or a support, or like what's a door stop for?
For holding the door open.
To hold it open. So the door to life is held open. So if the door to life, what's the door to life?
Yeshua.
Who holds it open?
The Lord?
It says no one comes to God except the Spirit draws him. So if you were walking up to a building and somebody right ahead of you opens the door and stands back and waves to this, what are they telling you to do?
Come on in.
Come in.
Mm-hmm.
So they're holding the door
Mm-hmm.
for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that word Hadassah. Literally, if you took those three letters, He, Dalet, Samak, it literally means the doorway or the door into life is being held open. And of course, that's another brief picture of the gospel. Door is Dalet, doorway is another word. It's patach.
Yeah.
And patach is pe, tav, pe, tav, ket.
Uh-huh.
What they mean?
Which ones again?
Starts with pe.
Pay.
It's patach.
Is an eye?
No, pe is mouth.
Mouth. Okay.
I am is I.
Okay.
Your mouth.
Yeah. Mouth. And
Or maybe your word.
okay.
Tav.
I can't remember what tav.
Cross-shaped mark.
Yeah.
A cross. And chet is the 8th letter, and it means new beginnings, 8. Okay. So it literally comes down to the Word of God through the cross takes you to new beginning. That's the doorway. Now the doorway is just an opening through a wall, but if there's a door there, it depends on the position of the door, whether you're going through or not.
Right.
Well, if the door is locked shut, you got a doorway, but
Yeah.
you can't go. If the doorway is open, if the door is open, then you can go. The Lord said, I'm the door. So it's up to the Lord to either be open or shut, isn't it?
Yeah.
And of course, the Revelation talks about people being afraid of the wrath of the Lamb.
Yeah.
Well, what's the Lamb for anyway?
Take away the sin of the world.
Yeah. And so if the Lamb takes away your sin, he's doing something good for you, isn't he?
Yeah.
But what if they're facing the wrath of the Lamb? What does that mean?
Well, he's got another function, doesn't he?
So the wrath of the Lamb would be like the door being slammed shut, wouldn't it not?
Yeah.
And holding you out. You can't come in.
Going back to that judgment thing.
So the door is, depending on your choice, is either going to be good for you or it'll be something terrorizing to you. So the doorway is there, and the doorway leads into life. But whether you're going through or not depends on the position of the door. And the Lord said, I'm the door. Now you remember, that same concept was in a shepherd putting his sheep into the pen, and in the doorway he himself would park in the door or in the opening, and he said the sheep come in through the doorway, or they go out through it to pasture. So who decides whether they're coming in or out?
The shepherd.
The shepherd. And he's parked in the doorway. If he doesn't want any of them to come out, he holds himself there where they can't come out. If he wants them to come out, he would open it up for them or stand back, and so on. What if a predator tried to get into the sheep?
Lock them out.
He would hold him out. and he'd probably kill him while he's at it, wouldn't he? I mean, because the wrath of the shepherd, or the wrath of the lamb, who is the shepherd, can either do something good for the sheep, or he can be a danger to the predator. What if a thief or a robber tried to steal some sheep? The shepherd would fight him off, or something. So that concept that the Lord is the door, tending over the doorway. And so, that same word, doorway or door, is even used to describe the jaws of a crocodile. Like a door that opens up and takes things in. When I think it was Joash, Josiah, one of those, not a good king. I can't think which one it was.
Josiah was good.
Yeah, there was one that was an evil king, though, and he started with a J. Anyway, they found the book of the Torah that had been hidden, and he'd read a little of it, and then he took a knife and cut it and threw it in a fire. Remember that one? And it says the way he described it, the pages of the Torah that he was reading were called doors. The same word delet is used for them, because they flip open like a door opening. And I don't know. Nowadays, the Torah is written on scrolls and it's not pages, and I don't know exactly how they would call that by pages, unless it means that as it turn it and a certain line would come through, they'd cut that off, throw it in the fire. And what was that guy's name? I think it started with a J. Joash, maybe.
I don't remember his. Now most of them were bad, so it's easier to remember the good ones.
Well, I can't remember for sure, but anyway, it was I'm pretty sure he started with a J, and I don't even remember where that would be. It'd probably be in where would that be, in 2 Kings, maybe?
It'd be later, right?
Or either Kings or Chronicles.
It'd be later in the stories, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd be at least in 2nd, I think. 2 Chronicles or 2 Kings, maybe.
Jehoshaphat? He's a J.
Yeah, it seemed like it was a shorter name.
Joram?
Might have been. I just can't remember.
Joash was good. Jehoiada?
I
think it said he made reforms. Joash repaired the temple, but he also had treachery.
Somewhere in there, talking about them showing in the book of the Torah, and he cut it up and threw it in the fire.
I'll have to look up that one.
Yeah. It's getting late. What time
it's later than it's been in a while.
Oh, it's 10:15.
I don't think we've given it this much time in a long time.
I think we better go home.
Okay.
I get this recorder. I didn't even get to my other questions.
Next time.
Yeah.
Some questions you just can't answer in a minute or two. Right.
Well, maybe I can bounce them off of you on the way.
Well, what is it?
Well, I got a new friend. He is from the Church of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And we got in touch with each other, and he's having some struggles. He's kind of going through a questioning period in his life, saying, I'm not sure if this is the right thing. He knows that it's not good to be a Pharisee.
Yeah.
In the way that people categorize Pharisees. And he senses that the brethren at the church are kind of Pharisaical and legalistic.
Yeah.
And he's not wanting to go that way. But he still has some things that he's
hanging on to, like for instance, this is some of the language he uses: the law of Christ.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how he defines it, but he believes that there are commandments that must be kept.
Yeah.
And
well, okay, you know, you walk into a dark room. How do you get rid of the darkness?
turn on the light.
Yeah. You can fight the darkness all you want. Why don't you take a big bag and scoop up a whole bunch of darkness and throw it out? Will that make the light light? I mean, it just doesn't work.
All right.
So, how are you going to get rid of untruth? Don't fight it. Just tell the truth.
Right.
So, if he wants to know about obeying commands,
Yeah.
you just show him all the places where the Lord said, here's what I want. And they didn't always do it. In fact, probably most of the time they did not, did they?
Right.
But he never destroyed him for that. He just said, you're my people. And so our obedience is not going to be about how good we are, but it's his obedience that makes us righteous.
Yeah.
We just have to kind of show him that. Chances are he may not understand, what does it mean, his obedience or his righteousness, And if we can help him to see that when the Lord talked about obeying commands, he's not talking about you just doing a bunch of stuff, but it's recognized that he is our righteousness.
Yeah.
And just kind of work on those kind of thinking, I think, would be more valuable than trying to argue about whether or not you're supposed to obey commands.
Yeah.
Of course you're supposed to obey commands. Is it ever right to disobey God?
No.
But on the other hand, if the Lord only required that we be obedient or else, then who would survive?
Nobody.
There is a psalm that says, if the Lord kept a record of sins, who could survive?
Yeah.
It says that. You might show him something like that. So, does that give you an excuse to be wrong?
No.
No, it doesn't. But on the other hand, it tells you that if our only the ones who obeyed were saved, then it said, who could stand? So that's a rhetorical question. When he says who could stand, what does he mean?
It means nobody can stand.
Nobody could do it. So there would be no one who could do it. No one. The most righteous, wonderful person you can imagine, if it was up to God keeping records of sin, they wouldn't make it.
Right.
So
because our righteousness comes from Christ alone.
So with that, we can say, well, then that doesn't give us an excuse to be wrong, but it says there's still hope because the Lord has been made to be our right. It says he carried our griefs and bore our sorrows. What are we sorrowful about? What are we grieving about? Because of our failures and things that aren't right. But he carried all that.
Yeah.
And it says he, Isaiah 53 is a wonderful thing. He was wounded for our transgressions.
Yeah.
And our sins were laid on him. So what happens if you don't obey the Lord? Well, what does he do with that sin? Laid it on him. And he bore it. He wounded for that. Did that wounding that he took, did it do any good?
Yeah.
I mean, did it work?
Yeah.
Or was it a failure?
Yeah.
So if it worked, did it work because we do the right thing?
No.
It worked because he was our sacrifice.
Yes.
And if it weren't for that, then who would make it? So what we realize is that, or what we can see is that it's not that we have to obey or else. It's not that. But on the other hand, if we don't obey, then it just grieves the Lord and it makes our life less useful and less effective, and it gives us misery,
Mm-hmm.
So what he needs to realize is what the salvation and sacrifice of the Lord really did.
Yeah.
And it's not just giving you a new list of rules to obey. You know, if that's all it is, well, every religion's got their list of rules.
Yeah.
Which one of them saves anybody? You know,
Yeah.
they all like to claim it does, but it doesn't. So that's something you might lay on him.
All right. I'll do
So see where that goes.
it. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm gonna roar on home, I think.
Let me unload all